Well, good evening to you, one and all. It's a fine evening here in Scotland, and it's time for another happy hour. This is number 48 now. We're getting close to the big 5-0. God knows what we're going to do for that one, but it seems appropriate considering, the world of Lord of the Rings is probably going to get ruined by Amazon pretty soon. We should just celebrate when Lord of the Rings was actually still good and fun and awesome. And so thought, why not discuss the Fellowship of the Ring, the first in one of the best movie trilogies of all time. And I've been lucky enough to get on a guest that people have been asking me to bring on for ages. I'm really excited to have him on. It's his Voxis Productions himself. Good evening, sir.
Hello. It's been, yes, this has been much requested, hasn't it? It's been a long time coming. Here you go, fans. Your anime crossover, The Critical Drinker, and Professor Tosspot at last. So, yes, thanks ever so much for having me on, Mr. Drinker. You could have had Joe Rogan as a guest, but instead you decided to pick me. So, thanks.
I think I lucked out there. To be honest, I got the better part of that deal. So, yeah, it's great to have you on, man.
Come on now. My ass is for sitting, not for kissing. So, what are we drinking tonight?
All right. Well, I've got a bottle of Maker's Mark here, so good to go. And there's plenty in it, so hopefully I'll get through a fair amount of that before we're done with this stream.
Yes, we're going to need a big one when we're talking about certainly the Rings of Power.
Yeah, that's that's going to be very special. I should ask, actually. You've obviously seen the trailer, and you've probably.
I try not to think about it. I get PTSD flashbacks. I think at the end we're just going to have to give our eulogies to the franchise.
We had 20 years of pretty good times with this. We got the original trilogy, got a big gap. We got the Hobbit. It's a bit shit, but whatever. And now they've come to take it, and they've come to ruin it. And 20 years isn't bad, I suppose, for any franchise.
Yeah. Oh yes. Lord of the Ring, the Fellowship of the Ring, which obviously is what we're talking about today, that came out, bloody hell, 21 years ago.
Yeah, and I saw this in the cinema. I was old enough to have seen it when it came out theatrically.
Yeah, I remember seeing it.
I feel old.
Yeah, well, how do you think I fucking feel? Take me back, Drinker. Such simple times.
It really was. I mean, man, we were just spoiled back then, and I don't know about you. I had read the books multiple times before the movies came out. I'd been a big fan of them since my early teens. I know obviously pretty mainstream as far as fantasy novels go, but damn, like they take some beating. So I was really curious to see what they could do with a movie adaptation. Could they possibly measure up to the sort of scale and the grandeur of the world that Tolkien had created? And I think within the first 5 minutes of Fellowship of the Ring, I knew they'd nailed it. They absolutely got it right. And man, that movie was just an absolute blast.
It's very hard to adapt books to the big screen, and especially one that's as big as Lord of the Rings. And the fact of the matter is, even before Peter Jackson's version, there had been attempts and negotiations with studios to make and adapt Lord of the Rings, and so many of them fell through. But Jackson, through sheer willpower and luck as well, managed to create this film and, of course, the rest of the trilogy. So in some ways, it's a bit of a one-off because you can't recreate the circumstances that led to the first film being made. You can't recreate certainly with modern Hollywood, because Hollywood today is much more like an assembly line. And Lord of the Rings was produced over 5 years, really. The Peter Jackson movies, they were in production for a long time, and you wouldn't get that nowadays. A lot of studios would say, you got to get it done within a year. We've got the money men in the bean counters tapping, on their watches. You got to get it out soon. So you wouldn't have as much care put into the product if it was made today, which obviously we're starting to see signs of with this new Amazon stuff. That's for later, obviously. But yeah, the circumstances you can't recreate, because even Peter Jackson had trouble getting the Fellowship of the Ring out. He had to fight the studios, and originally they said, no, you can only do one movie, one and done. But this was a passion project, and that's the real difference with anything that's going to come afterwards is, are the people who are making the new Lord of the Rings stuff passionate about? Do they have a sense of love for the source material? And Peter Jackson did. And like I said, the circumstances for making this movie were a bit of a one-off, because the studio weren't going to put lots of money down for this big epic fantasy movie. And we hadn't, I mean, I'm ranting a bit, but generally speaking, when it comes to in film terms of the when coming to the fantasy genre, we have had fantasy movies in the past, but they were a bit, let's say, campy, weren't they? They were the sword and sorcery stuff. They were your Conan films with big muscly dudes on steroids and women in chainmail bikinis. And if you watch those films,
not that that's bad, of course, you know.
No, of course not. I mean, you watch those films as a young boy, it jump starts your puberty. By the time you've through the second Conan film as a boy, you've got your 5 o'clock shadow already and a thirst for blood and girls. But that's the thing; they were campy and it was a bit naff. Whereas when the Fellowship of the Ring came out, it was a bit more grounded, if you can really apply that phrase to a fantasy genre. It's a bit more realistic and a bit more, I guess, sensible. It wasn't as campy.
It was accessible, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think when you watched a lot of those 80s fantasy movies, whether it was Conan, whether it was like really like out there fantasy, like stuff like Legend and stuff like that, you know, they were very niche films, and they were very much designed for a small subset of audiences. And you really had to be into that genre to appreciate them. Willow is probably another one that came to mind. But with Lord of the Rings, it's like you say, it gets rid of the really outlandish stuff and the really campy aspect of things, and it takes it dead serious right off the bat. This is something that you're meant to pay attention to. You're meant to take seriously. It's a serious story with real characters in it, and it sets the tone perfectly, I think. Yeah, really revived that fantasy genre that had been kind of dead throughout the 1990s. There really wasn't much going on in that regard.
Yeah, and even though it came out in 2001, it was a 90s film, really, because production started around about 1995 or 96, and they in terms of what they produced for the era, it still holds up. 21 years later, you can still watch Lord of the Rings and it holds up. It had really good prosthetics as well. It had CGI that, for the most part, still holds up. You know, I'd hazard a guess that maybe in another 20 years, you can still look back at it and go, yeah, this still holds up. And of course, it's in a fantasy setting. There's nothing that makes it dated. There's no references to George Bush or anything like that. So it does stand the test of time.
I think so. It's funny because it came along at a really interesting time in movie making where CGI was starting to become really prevalent, but it wasn't particularly good yet. It wasn't really convincing. And so it could have easily gone horribly wrong if they'd overused it. But they were really smart, because it surprised me until I looked back on it more recently. A lot of the shots were actually miniatures with CGI figures composited into it. So say you got those big sweeping shots of say Saruman's base at Orthanc, that's it. Isengard, that's it. It's the Tower of Orthanc there, and the big plain of Isengard with all the mines and stuff. That's all miniatures. That was a set that they built for this, so the camera could sweep in and out of it. And what was digitally composited in was the orcs moving around across it, and that's what gives you that sense of scale. But they were smart enough to use CGI as little as they could. Like I say, a lot of miniature work was done there that you would never think, but when you actually watch behind the scenes and stuff, that's how they did a lot of it. And I think that struck that great balance. And yeah, the overall effect is, for the most part, it looks great. There's definitely a few shots where you can tell it was green screened and it's a little bit rough. It's a film that was made 20 years ago. I can totally accept it. And for the time, it looked absolutely fantastic. So I won't hold that against it at all.
Yeah. But and effects aside, the production in general, the set design is amazing. The score is also good, and your cast of actors. You know, some actors don't really shine as much, but what's great is you also have a lot of old classically trained actors to help boost up the performance. So you've got Sir Ian McKellen as Gandalf, of course, and he really carries the film. He's a great character. He plays the, halfway through the film, you're in love with Gandalf. You like his character. He's brilliant. And you certainly get a sense that everyone gets a feel for the characters. And by, the second and third film, everyone knows who they're playing, and that chemistry as well between all the different characters and actors is solidified. And, some people would argue that Lord of the Rings and the trilogy is almost a perfect trilogy because filmmaking is multifaceted. It's not just one thing. It's not just having a good script. It's everything. It's set design, costumes, acting, score, set design. I think I've said set design, editing, all of it, and it hits all those notes just right. So you can see why people get up in arms about Amazon trying to outdo it or compete.
It's you really hit the nail on the head earlier when you just said it felt like a lot of things just worked, and everything just came together just right. You had Peter Jackson, who was not a well-known filmmaker at that time. He'd done like smaller movies. He'd done like a lot of like really gross out horror films and stuff, like not the kind of guy you would expect to be doing a big epic sweeping fantasy. But somehow this guy just absolutely found his calling with these movies and just got the exact right tone, the right look and feel, just nailed it. The cast, again, like you say, there's a real mix of relatively young and newbie actors, and seasoned veterans, and people who were better known as character actors suddenly brought into like the leading man kind of role. Viggo Mortensen wasn't a big leading man up until that point. I knew him from films like Crimson Tide or Daybreak and stuff, like playing like smaller parts. And yet suddenly he has to play Aragorn. And, this is a guy who has to absolutely command the screen when he needs to. And as it turns out, I guess Viggo Mortensen was one of those actors who just takes everything dead serious. Like he goes into every part like 100%. And apparently he was in character a lot of the time, even when they weren't shooting. He was carrying his sword around with him everywhere. Like that guy was just living the role of Aragorn. And yeah, because they filmed it all back to back, there was a real bond, I think, between the actors.
Didn't they get matching tattoos, or is that an urban myth?
That is true. Yeah, they got tattoos. I don't know, on their wrists or something like that.
Yeah, it's something in Elvish. I'm trying to remember. What was it?
I think Jonathan Rhys-Davies was the only one who didn't get it, for whatever reason. But yeah, the rest of them, they all got it, and it was something about the Fellowship in Elvish, which just, I guess, it shows you how much it meant to all of them to be doing that. I mean, I guess if you're working with people every day for years on end, you do form that bond with them,
which you wouldn't get if you were on the Hollywood assembly line when a film gets rushed out. You'd spend, maybe a month or two getting to know some of the actors, and that's it. But this, again, 5 years, the components, and again, the circumstances, you couldn't have that today. No studio is going to say, yeah, we're going to give you 5 years to work on this fantasy epic, a genre that isn't really that, at the time, certainly wasn't that popular, and you're asking for 3 movies and you want how much money for this? It was risky. And as you said, Peter Jackson himself, he hadn't done something of this scale as well. That's what's also risky. As you said, he did splatter movies. Now, when I used to be a film teacher, I used to be teaching student filmmakers, I would always hold up Peter Jackson as a great example of directors when they start out. So you'd have all these students making all these crappy little student films. No offense to any ex-students who are watching this, but you tried. But they would always be a bit disheartened because they think, this is low budget, it looks crappy. And I would always say, well, you have to start somewhere. And I would always say Peter Jackson's perfect example. His first film was Bad Taste, which is about aliens in latex masks trying to turn Earth into a fast food restaurant. And it's all very B movie. But he worked on that for, I think it was over a year. And he hired his friends and family, and he told them, look, don't get any haircuts for the next year. You need to keep that mullet you've got. Otherwise, it's going to fuck up continuity. And he was really dedicated to his low-budget piece of crap. And then a couple years later, he starts getting a couple more films under his belt. And then he does Lord of the Rings, which is considered a film classic. It's a great way of seeing a director who has a passion and gets better and learns from each project. And there's this kind of this upward trajectory. So that's what makes him good, is because he's a director who learns and improves. And some modern directors don't do that. A lot of modern directors are either hired through nepotism, or they're a yes man for the company. Here's some money. Can you get it done by this date? Yeah. You're not going to cause any arguments? Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, just give me, the money and credit. Okay, done. That wasn't the case with Peter Jackson. That's why he really stands out in this case.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's a shame that I feel like he started a downward trajectory when he did the Hobbit trilogy. But some of that was just down to the writing and trying to spin out basically a one movie story into 3 films. You end up with a lot of filler, and you end up with a lot of crazy over the top CGI sequences that are just completely implausible. And yeah, I think that's what really took me out of the film so badly. I don't know how you felt about the Hobbit trilogy, like whether you liked them or personally, I just thought they were such a step down from Lord of the Rings.
Yes, it's really looking at the behind the scenes. There was problems with production, which is always a red flag. And Peter Jackson, it felt like his heart wasn't in it. The studio begged him to come back because at that point his name had weight. I think they had some other director on. I could be wrong. I think originally they had Del Toro. I could be wrong there. I might have to double check that. But originally they had another director on board, and they were saying, no, we need. He's got some other plans, contract problems, something like that. But so they begged him to come back, and it was really stressful, apparently. And yeah, there was a lot of filler. And I'd put it off. I actually only watched the Hobbit trilogy a few months back because I was always told it was a bit crap. It had its moments, where it was kind of capturing little bits. But yeah, the problem was this very arcadey. It was like a video game CGI. The bit where Legolas is jumping on those blocks, I was just thinking, put a Super Mario boing sound on that, and it wouldn't look out of place in a video game. It was Hollywood going, it needs more action. These stories aren't action-packed enough. And I guess that's kind of a sign of the times with a lot of studio meddling. Now films very much controlled by studios. I mean, how many times have we heard about production of big movies being affected by the studio meddling? They've listened to a focus group. They have to do reshoots. They have to change, or directors getting fired and things like that. Star Wars comes to mind for that kind of behavior. And that's why there is this disparity. You're right. The Hobbits, it has those moments, but too much of a reliance on computer effects and not, as you said, this mashing of different old school, what we would consider old school, certainly by today's standards, special effects. Like you said, there's miniatures, there's matte paintings, there's CGI, and you blend all those elements together. Now it's a computer that does all these effects, and usually it's done in South Korea. Someone's given a brief, and there's these CGI factories. There are fields, endless fields, Drinker, of Koreans sat in front of computers. It's that's modern
you can't be told about the fields. You have to see them with your own eyes.
For the longest time, I didn't believe it.
No, I agree, and it's it's kind of sad that it tarnished that franchise a little bit. I mean, it doesn't take anything away from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like ultimately, they're still always going to be awesome, but they all fall within that same sphere. And I think you could have just produced like a really nice, tightly written movie that would have encompassed The Hobbit, and that would have been a nice way to round it out. But hey ho, they wanted more money, they wanted their trilogy again, and this is what you got. But never mind.
I'm interested to see how fondly people are going to look back at the Hobbit trilogy when Amazon's done their butchering. because I think some people are starting to. I've seen already people going, you know what? Maybe The Hobbit wasn't too bad. At least it's set in a Middle Earth that looks like how I imagined it. I think
It's the
that's what happened.
prequel effect all over again, isn't it? The Star Wars prequels.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. You know what? Maybe Jar Jar Binks wasn't so bad.
Yeah, it's like, you know, Revenge of the Sith. It's got some merit to it. You know, just give it a chance.
Yeah.
That's always the way, and it's damn, isn't it a shame that that's where we're at, you know, in terms of entertainment culture, that like it's just this gradual downward slide, and so everything that came just 5 or 10 years ago, we're looking back fondly at it. It seems so much higher up that slope because we've fallen so far, and who knows, like, is it ever going to stop? I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's obviously we're probably going to get into the Amazon incident, but yes, we're at this stage where franchises are not only cash cows that have been milked, but we're being given the dregs, and they've gone sour. And the problem with these big IPs, and we're seeing it, it's not just Lord of the Rings, it's Alien, it's Star Wars, it's Star Trek. Their names carry weight. And that's why they get bought up by these big companies. They're called pre-bought franchises. And excuse me one second. And franchises like that, you know you're going to get a fan base with it. You know it's instantly recognizable. You don't have to put as much effort into establishing it in the realm of cinema. So they always go for these. But the problem is, after a while, once you keep churning out these films, that weight just to that name, it loses its value. Suddenly, no longer do you go, oh, there's a new Terminator film. You suddenly go, oh, there's a new Terminator film. How many is that now? Oh, 7. Okay. 8? Oh, no, it's the 8th one. You know what I mean? Suddenly, that name, it's the opposite. Now it's as a detriment. Now when people see Star Wars, they go, oh, fuck, no, another one. Oh, how they fucked it up this time. There's no longer that reverence. You start to avoid it. It's so strange that that's what you do. You take this name and you try and get as much money out of it, and suddenly that name that held value has no value at all, and then it suddenly becomes a detriment. And the fans of that intellectual property that you've, you know, taken charge of start to despise what you've done, and they no longer, you know, hold that name in such high regard. It's rather sad.
Everything's got a finite amount of goodwill attached to it, and you can only tarnish it so much before people give up. It's the Bruce Willis effect. You know how he used to be like a pretty fun actor, and you could go see a Bruce Willis action movie, and it used to be decent. And then, you know, the past few years, he's been churning out like 10 movies a year of just absolute no effort garbage, where he's just there to collect a paycheck, and so, you know, his name's become synonymous now with shit films that like he doesn't even want to be in. And so it's the same effect. Those fans that I guess used to be kind of loyal to him will have just given up on him now, because they know, like, yeah, he doesn't give a shit about making films anymore. He's just there to make money with the least amount of effort possible. And yeah, you can only do that to any franchise so much before people give up on it. It's pretty much happened with Star Wars. I think it's happened with Star Trek for sure.
What franchise hasn't had this treatment? Everything that you loved from the 90s and 80s has come back either rebooted or rehashed. I'm trying to think off the top of my head of these franchises that I loved and how many have been taken and mangled or made contemporary and have contemporary politics and things like that don't age well and or really don't fit into that franchise. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're witnessing here is just pure cultural stagnation, and is clearly a sign that society is going to collapse and humanity is doomed. But I wouldn't worry about it.
On the plus side, though, you know, we can point and laugh at it as we go, so that's fine. You know,
it's gotten to that point where we know we can see the writing on the wall for some TV shows and things, and we say that's going to be shit. I haven't seen it yet, but I know it's going to be shit, and yet we still watch it just so we can go, yeah, I was right, that was shit. And it's getting to that point where people are watching these reboots, not because they genuinely think it's going to be good. They just want to see, out of some sort of morbid curiosity, just how badly are they going to rape what you love. It's like some horrible cuckolding fetish that we have with these franchises. I really want to see what I love getting fucked. Yeah, I'll pay the cinema ticket price, and then I can tell people on Twitter as well that I also see something I love getting fucked.
That's it. Like when I was discussing Doctor Who at one point, and I likened it to someone taking your favorite childhood teddy bear and strapping like a 10-inch black rubber dildo to the head, and like complaining if you raise an objection to that happening, and calling you some kind of bigot. That's where you're at with these franchises.
Yeah.
There was just to answer this question here. Bruce Willis is supposed to have dementia, hence the earpiece. He doesn't have dementia. He's partially deaf in one ear.
Yep.
He was deafened during the making of Die Hard when he's under the table firing up at the guy who's standing above him because the gun's right next to his head, and for some reason he wasn't wearing earplugs, and it shattered his eardrum. So that's why he has to wear an earpiece, apparently.
Yep. That's true.
Anyway, just responded to a random comment there because it totally jumped out at me. But yeah, we should probably talk a little bit about Fellowship of the Ring, I suppose.
Yes, let's talk about something happy.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, like, you talk about intros, like this movie obviously has to encompass a hell of a lot of history and backstory in a really short space of time to get, just random audience members clued into what's happening. And it does it really effectively. It's all just a voiceover from Galadriel, and you get the battle on the slopes of Mount Doom, and like the Sauron getting destroyed, but the ring gets taken by Isildur. And straight away you just get that real sense of epic scale. You get these enormous battles with tens of thousands of soldiers involved. It just looks awesome. Like that opening sequence is fantastic.
Yes, because you've got obviously that big exposition dump and a lore dump as well. And if you've never read the books or anything, or you're just going because you saw the trailers or what have you, you've obviously got to draw your audience in, but at the same time follow the rules of show don't tell, and also not bore them. And obviously Peter Jackson does a sterling job of just skipping the foreplay, and he just throws you right and go, look, here you go, epic battles, this is what you want, but also here's a bit of story. And it works. He gets all the fluff out the way and goes straight into the action.
Yep. And then you get that, so you get the sense of like how important this ring is, what it is, and then the fact that it gets lost, and it's only discovered later by Bilbo during the events of The Hobbit, which again is just really quickly glossed over. Like it's not important to this story really, to then get you into the Shire in the present day. And I just love the contrast. Obviously, the idea is you go from this like nightmarish apocalyptic war for the fate of Middle Earth, and then you're just in the Shire, and it's like jolly old England, some kind of fantasy version of that, where the sun's shining and it's all just like quiet fields everywhere, and the hobbits are just going about their day, and it's all very homely and everything. Like that's it. The fact that Tolkien was British, it just absolutely comes through in how he portrayed the hobbits. Like they are just your stereotypical British people. They love drinking tea and
if I remember correctly, he based a lot of the places in Lord of the Rings on places in England. So the Shire is actually Gloucestershire, which is here in England, and hobbits are essentially, Bristolians. So so lots of England was incorporated into Lord of the Rings. So Gloucestershire is the Shire, and of course the dark and horrible, scary lands of Mordor are clearly based on Birmingham. So there's a lot of inspiration there.
Birmingham is terrifying. It actually makes Mordor look good by comparison.
Look, you just see millions and millions of pounds of improvements. But you've got that stark contrast, and again, you've got there is another exposition dump. You've got Bilbo writing about the hobbits and establishing that, but again, it's not done in a boring way. It is that good balance of showing and not telling as much. Obviously, there's a bit of context given to everything, but you have that, as you said, that really good contrast. So you've just had your little spike in the roller coaster, that little adrenaline rush, and then you get settled into it and you get eased into this grand epic adventure, because it starts off very small and it grows. And at the end of the day, the story of the Fellowship of the Ring it's a very simple story. At the end of the day, it's about a very small man, a manlet, if you will, who has a ring and he wants to drop it off at this very edgy smelter. If we're going to oversimplify the story of the Fellowship of the Rings, but the simple stories are always the best ones, I find. So it's not overcomplicated.
Exactly. Obviously, the circumstances and the lore and the background, the world building behind it all is the complex part. But like you say, with any fantasy story, there's a quest. There's an objective that you're striving towards, and this one is very clearly laid out. We've got this thing; it's really dangerous. We've got to destroy it. Oh, it's really kind of unlucky. We've got to take it to the most dangerous place in Middle Earth. Yep, but that's what we got to do. Um, but yeah, I love the as well. Like when you talk there about how it starts small, the Shire is obviously this quiet little corner of Middle Earth where nobody shows up from the outside world, and nothing really happens. Like if anything slightly unusual was to take place, it would be the talk of the town for like years afterwards. It's that kind of place. And so like even when Gandalf shows up, like that is the kind of thing that's like a once in a lifetime visit. And so it gives you that grounding of how sheltered the lives of someone like Frodo is. Like Bilbo is a guy who's been on adventures and stuff, but now he's retired and he's living like a quiet existence. But now he's planning to leave, and obviously that's the thing that you start to learn. He's planning to leave the Shire, and go on another adventure again, and he needs to give up the ring in order to go. And that's when you start to get the first inkling of the effect that it's having on him, because he has to give it over to Gandalf. And I love this. I love this whole aspect of what the ring is and what it represents, and how, on the face of it, it's just this innocuous little gold ring. It's the most like unthreatening looking thing you can imagine, but it's the ability to corrupt people around it that's so terrifying about it. It can take good people, righteous people, and turn them into monsters little by little, just by seducing them with the power of what it is. And I think that's awesome. You get to see so much of it throughout the movies, all three of them, how it can, it starts to worm its way into someone like Boromir, who's obviously already got a chip on his shoulder. It finds your weakness and it exploits it. But even times when the gatherings start to argue about something, you can see the ring almost exploiting it and driving those divisions between people, and making them turn against each other. I think it's such a cool concept.
Yeah, and it's a very simple concept to illustrate a larger point that power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. But another thing we should obviously mention is that if we look at it from the literary background, the Lord of the Rings film is based on a book that was it was the second one to come out from J.R.R. Tolkien, and that's because The Hobbit was his first one. And you get glimpses of what happened in The Hobbit. There's references to The Hobbit. So for some people coming in, there's going to be coming into it new. There's going to be references that Bilbo Baggins makes and other people make that you won't necessarily get if you've never read The Hobbit. So there is this kind of little foundation that's laid out. Bilbo's had his adventure, and not only is the ring passing on the power, but it's also passing on that specific adventure to Frodo. And it's now his journey, a different hobbit on an even more epic adventure, basically the fate of the world. So, yeah, for those of you who are not familiar with the books, it has to be noted that The Lord of the Rings is only the second one. The Hobbit, obviously, there was a trilogy made afterwards, and not many people like it. But yeah, it's part of a larger series of books. And then obviously after Lord of the Rings, you had I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, the Silmarillion. I shouldn't have had that much whiskey. Yes, which is all J.R. Tolkien's notes and short stories and poems and things like that, which fleshes out the world a lot more. So, but the big question is, does The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, do the book justice? And I would say pretty much. Obviously, there are those Hollywood elements where something simple, like, crossing a stream, it's not simple. It's got to be bombastic. There's got to be action and things like that to, for the popcorn munchers, the people who like their action films. So there is the Hollywood-esque part. But for the most part, it has that slow, comforting feel, like it's like you're being read a story, like a fairy tale or something like that.
I mean, I think, you know, it's just shy of 3 hours for the theatrical cut. The extended cut is like well over 3.5. So that is a hefty movie. And I think for the most part, they are pretty damn faithful to the books. Like I do, there's bits that they've condensed down or simplified or whatever, for necessity. There's only so much you can cram in. There's only so much exposition you can put on the audience before you start to lose them. And I think it strikes that perfect balance of just knowing the key information they need to get across so that people understand the stakes, they understand the key players, and it gives them enough to work with. You know, I can live without Tom Bombadil because that bit was always just this weird little interlude in the books that really has no connection to anything else that happens. The only significance it has is that's where they get their barrow blades, one of which is used to eventually injure the Witch King during, you know, the Return of the King. But that is just handled, with the simple fact that they're given some swords, I think in Rivendell, just to protect themselves. So that's fine. It doesn't need all of that Tom Bombadil interlude or whatever to make that happen. So I think they did a pretty damn good job of adapting the books,
Yeah,
personally. And yeah, like obviously you then get the Bilbo obviously does eventually give up the ring, and you can see the toll it takes on him to have to do that. Which, like I say, it gives you that hint of the pull that it has on someone. It just gets into your mind, and it passes to Frodo, and that's when he sort of takes possession of, you know, for a little while until Gandalf eventually returns, because he realizes what it actually is now, and he realizes how dangerous it is. And yeah, that's when he has to set out on his quest. His initial, I think, his objective is just to get it to Rivendell and deliver it to people who can actually handle it properly. You know, so it seems like a nice, fairly simple quest for him, and it's a chance to do something a bit more adventurous. So he's all right with doing it, and I think that's when you get Sam. Sam gets thrown in as well because he was eavesdropping on the conversation.
yeah. But the best thing about it is it's a bit of an underdog story because they are clearly out of their depth. You've got, you know, essentially, you know, what, a couple feet shy of midgets going on a grand adventure where they are outnumbered. They're against, you know, people twice, 3 times their height with a taste for human flesh and are armed to the teeth. And then someone's like, yeah, here's a backpack with some sandwiches. Have at it. We're going to stay behind here. Good luck, though. We're rooting for you. Yeah, the Elven Council is essentially NATO. They'll give them the gear, but they won't get involved. So,
yeah.
Just to be a bit contemporary.
Good luck, chaps. See you on the other side.
Thoughts and prayers. Hashtag.
Yeah.
Go to Mordor.
Let's change our banner to the flag of the Shire. Would be fine. But yeah, and it you know, the movie, like I say, it starts to take you out of that comfort zone, little bit by bit. You know, they meet up with Merry and Pippin, which is, it's weird. They just kind of bump into them in a field, and then suddenly they're all together. But yeah, okay, fine. And you know, that's when they encounter the Black Riders for the first time. You know, they're just, and again, I love how this scene's played out. Like they're just in the forest, like they've stopped to eat or something, and it's a nice sunny day. And then Frodo realizes that something's wrong, something's coming their way, and like you get that weird dolly shot of like him looking off into the woods, and you get like that reverse zoom kind of thing. And then yeah, the Black Riders appear, and they've obviously been dispatched to hunt for Frodo. So they're only able to, you know, just kind of avoid them. So again, you get that understanding now of like, oh shit's getting real. You know, these guys have been sent out to get Frodo and get the ring. And yeah, that brings them to the village of Bree. It's like a little town. Again, just stepping things up like bit by bit. So they go from like Hobbiton, just like a little remote village, to now they're in a town. There's a lot more people there. There's humans there for the first time, so you get to see them. they get to go for a drink in a bar, and it's like, oh, the beer comes in pints, eh? I'm going to have one. Just great stuff like that. But yeah, like that's when they meet Aragorn as well for the first time. You know, he
doesn't he call
finds
himself Strider as well?
Strider, yeah, initially. And it's just he finds him because Frodo accidentally puts the ring on during like a drunken kind of altercation or whatever. He trips over and it falls onto his finger and he just vanishes. And he thinks he's gotten away clean, and then Strider's just right there to grab him as soon as he materializes. It's pretty cool. And again, you get to realize the danger that's lurking. You know, the Black Riders then storm into the village and try and kill them in the middle of the night. So yeah, all that stuff is great about just gradually increasing the danger and increasing the stakes.
Yeah, and it follows a certain pattern in storytelling, a tried and true method of having an altercation and then a bit of a breather. So they get away from the Black Riders. There's a bit of banter, and then Frodo gets stabbed, and he's got an infected wound, and he has to get to the elves, and then he gets to the Rivendell, and it's all very nice. It's all very gentle and warm again, and then they get kicked out into the cold, and then they're going, They have to go through the treacherous mountains and the mines of Moria, which we think, oh, it's going to be nice there because Gimli's got relatives. So it's going to be more of the nice stuff. That everyone's going to be knocking back their pints and they're going to be eating food and it's going to be fine. They're going to be surrounded by dwarven company. No, they get there. Everyone's fucking dead. And that's when it just starts to get really miserable again. And then, of course, Gandalf has that sacrificing moment. And you've got all this death and despair. And then afterwards, everyone has a cry. And then they go to another elfin place, and it's all warm and lovely. And there's like, no, fuck off again. More people have to die. There's a bigger quest. So you have these up and downs, up this emotional roller coaster, and it works, and it hits all those story beats. So you get a lot of action, but you also get a chance to have a bit of a breather. So it's not a complete sensory overload of doom and gloom, but at the same time, you have that momentum. At the same time, it's not too relaxed. You get your breather, you get your smoke break, and then off you go. There's more there's more fuckery you got to get through.
No, it's light and dark all throughout the first movie, and it's perfect because exactly like you say, you can't bombard people with either constant action or constant like dark, serious drama. Or constant danger, because it just becomes overwhelming and eventually it just grinds you down. So you've got to give them those interludes to have a breather, to gather themselves again for the next stage of their journey. And what's great is that each place, it's not just about letting the characters have a breather. You learn a lot more about each person in each location. There's plot events that are given to you and you learn more about who everyone is. You get those great scenes between Boromir and Aragorn when they're at Rivendell, and Boromir's looking at the sword that cut the ring from Sauron's hand. And it's interesting, he pricks his finger on the blade and it pisses him off, and then he tries to lay it down and it falls on the floor. Straight away giving you this hint of, this guy's not entirely on the level. Obviously it's laying the groundwork for what happens to him later.
It's characterization. It's your basic characterization. That's why you can't have action all the time. You have to have, and this is obviously what a lot of modern movies forget to do, is have those moments where characters sit down, they discuss, and you get a better sense of their character and who they are and their personalities. You can't do that while dual-wielding pistols and spouting off one-liners. Eventually you have to sit down and go, you know what, I really want to discuss this situation. My name's Boromir. I'm a Capricorn. I like long walks on the beach. That's me. That's a character, and that's what you need. You need those moments where people sit down and talk like people, and get a sense of their characters, because that way you feel empathy for them and you can really get behind their adventure. And that also makes the action more impactful because you start to care for these people. So when someone gets stabbed, you don't go, ha ha, that's another kill count. You go, oh no, I care for that person. I don't want to see them die. That's what's important in filmmaking and storytelling in general.
And you get to see different aspects to them as well, because you know, as much as the movie suggests that Boromir is going to be a bit of a flawed member of the party, and he's perhaps the weak link in the group. You know, he gets great scenes with like Pippin and Merry when he's teaching them how to sword fight and stuff, and he's having a bit of a laugh with them. And you realize, okay, there's really good aspects to this guy as well. He's not just some asshole who wants to take the ring for himself. He's a good man, but he is flawed by his I guess, concern for his people, and he's not as able to resist the temptation of the ring as others are, which is great. It's like it's layered characterization. Yeah, he's a real person with different aspects to him.
He's not perfect. You know, he accosts Frodo, and then once Frodo's gone away, he suddenly has that moment of remorse, and he cries, he breaks down, and this is some hardened northern blokes. Northerners don't cry. But he does.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
I don't experience what you commonly refer to as emotion.
Water coming out of eyes. The fuck is that pussy shit? But yeah, he's a conflicted character, and then that comes through, and I think that's why we like the characters so much in Lord of the Rings. They're not Gary Stews or Mary Sues, as much as those phrases get thrown around. They are people, you know. Frodo is not the hero du jour. He's wet behind the ears. He's completely out of his depth. He's most of the time he's just like, I don't want this. I don't know what to do with this. This is too much. I'm having a panic attack. I can't deal. And you've got other characters. You've got Gimli, who is stubborn and set in his ways and is very, I guess, reserved and not willing to help as much, and he certainly has contempt for elves as well. So, you know, they're not. Some of these characters aren't necessarily goody two shoes either. Like you said.
Well, they've all got they've all got flaws to them, you know, and exactly like you say, you know, Frodo is terrified of what he's facing, but he kind of does it because there's no one else. Legolas is kind of an arrogant asshole a lot of the time. Like he's got no respect for Gimli. And to some extent, he's kind of indifferent to the hobbits. He's just there because he needs to be. And, you know, Aragorn is pretty standoffish a lot of the time. Boromir is clearly a flawed man as well. Merry and Pippin are a fucking nightmare who ultimately get Gandalf killed in Moria. Well, it's Pippin, isn't it, that does it, dropping that skeleton down the well. Fuck's sake.
Yeah, but no one's an asshole. She says at the end, you know, that was all your fault. Yeah, Gandalf's dead because of you. But no, they don't.
No, exactly. Like, yeah, they understand how much he's hurting already, and they all are, you know. And that's a great scene where they're all just showing their grief there. I was going to jump back slightly and just say I love the scene at the top of, I think it's called Amon Hen, the sort of hilltop fort that's all in ruins and stuff, and that's where Frodo gets stabbed by one of the dark, the Nazgul, basically. But there's a bit where he puts the ring on to try and avoid them, and then he gets to see them as they actually look, because they're always hidden. They're basically invisible to normal people, and you can only see the cloaks that they wear. And they're these, like, I guess, like withered husks of men, like the kings that they once were. They're just like almost like Egyptian mummies, all the skins like sunken into their faces and stuff. And I just thought that's a great image of what this has done to them. You know, they were once, I guess, good people in some way, but the ring has just decayed them down into like just walking corpses, and that's all they are now. And it's just like a terrifying image of what these things are underneath it all. I thought that was really cool. I really liked that moment.
Oh yeah, it looks spectacular. And when I was rewatching it, I was thinking, that's good. How did they do that? And the visuals itself, it's very striking. And this is, I mean, technically, this film is not a 2000 film. It's a 90s film because it was in production during the 90s. So all the tech and special effects is 90s stuff. But it looks great. It holds up fantastically. It's very good, and it's scary. And you see that level of corruption. You get glimpses of also Gollum, who has had the ring for years, and he isn't dead, but he's alive, but it's transformed him. But you only get slight glimpses of him. But even then, you can see that it's turned him into a monster, even though he's a hobbit. He's the same race as Sam, as Frodo, as all the other hobbits, but he doesn't look like one. He's got these big eyes. He's got these dirty long fingers. He doesn't look like anything. He's just this weird skeletal creature. So it's very striking. There's a lot of imagery that sticks in your mind as well. That's the thing. There's a very clear art direction, and it's gritty, but it's not try hard gritty. It's that groundedness. It doesn't feel like a campy fantasy film. It's not like Conan the Barbarian and things like that. And you've got people wearing latex masks. The prosthetics work. It looks realistic. The costumes look like people who live, there's no chainmail bikinis. I'm sorry, lads, watching. There's no chainmail bikinis. But
we're all gutted by that. But I know what you mean.
Well, you don't know what's under Galadriel's dress. She might be wearing some, but they don't show it.
I don't think they had bras back then, so I think this could be quite good. But yeah, it's all very practical. Yeah, like the clothing all looks weather worn and it looks used and it looks like the kind of stuff people would wear. Just to point out there, yeah, I was wrong. It's Weathertop where Frodo gets stabbed. Amon Hen is where the Fellowship gets broken at the end. My mistake. Too much of this. Yeah.
If we make a mistake like that, it was the booze.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have a feeling we're going to attract a lot of those actually types. The ones that will always be in the comment section of a YouTube to correct you with their Lord of the Rings knowledge. Actually, all right, you've got us on our toes. Give us a break.
we do our best. Like I am not going to be pretending that I'm like into the deep lore and that I'm an expert on everything Tolkien. I do my best. But yeah, we were all offended by the lack of LGBT representation on the Weathertop fight. There should have been a strong female character to come in and save them. But ironically enough, a strong female character does show up in the form of Arwen, who rescues Frodo and takes him to Rivendell so he can be healed up. But what's great about her is that she's not some ass-kicking warrior woman who's decked out in full like plate armor. She's just an elf. She's an elf princess.
She has an ethereal look to her, dreamlike, and even Aragorn, says, it's being with you was like being in a dream, or words to that effect, and that's a clear contrast of what you would probably expect nowadays. As you said, she would come in, she would have, kicked one orc, and 3 of them would have gone flying. She would have quipped and put the man down and said, "Oh, looks like you need a woman to help this time," or something that.
She would, honestly.
She'd then do a backflip as something explodes. And Aragorn, he'd just get droopy puppy dog eyes over her. He'd probably lose the grip of his sword and be like, "Oh, Butterfingers, you men." There probably wouldn't even be any romance there. And she would single-handedly, kill all the orcs, suck the poison out of Frodo, and tell him to fuck off. Because the woman's taking the show now. Yeah. There's subtlety. That's the difference. Subtlety. You don't have to be berating people like some sort of girl boss. Just be humble. Just be a person.
Well, I think, the movie makes the point as well that there's different kinds of strength, and it doesn't always have to come down to the size of your muscles or like the how hard you can swing a piece of metal into someone's face. Arwen is a character with strength, like spiritual strength. And emotional strength. That's where her strength as a character comes from. She's not physically strong. She doesn't need to be. That's not what she's there for. But it's like that kind of always gets overlooked now. And when people come to write characters like her and they think strong equals like being able to lift heavy things, and that's really as far as their thinking goes. And it's like she has to be a better fighter than any man in order to be considered strong. Doesn't work like that. That's not how you write female characters. And Peter Jackson understood that. Tolkien understood that, obviously. Like, this is what it's all based on. I love this one as well. The Arwen is how an Enya song materialized would look like. That's pretty much spot on, man.
They're very fragile, the elves, aren't they? Like, they look like if they sneezed, they'd break a rib.
They're all meant to be, they're tall and slender and graceful looking. They're not big bruisers that brute force their way through fights. You know, they're all about speed and agility and stuff. And man,
Having
yeah, I
really
don't know,
nice
man.
hair.
If I was, I think it's even, it comes across in even how they talk, like they sound almost like sleepy, like they're half in a dream. Because if you've been around for thousands of years, like probably just the effort of talking to someone would seem like too much. You know, you'd be thinking like, man, I've done this shit like a billion times already. I need a break. I just want
Give
to
him
die for a
swords, give
while.
him glowing water. I'm going to bed.
Yeah,
I
totally.
took
But
too many
that's
Valium.
that's what they tried to get across, I guess, in the movies. It's like the elves are they're so alien in how they see the world, because they don't live their lives like we do. You know, we get, I don't know, 70, 80 years. I mean, if you're Scottish, you probably get 40 if you're lucky. And that's your lot. And so you kind of live it quite immediately, your life. But like the elves, they see the world in terms of millennia. And so they just don't perceive things the same way we do. And it shows in how they deal with other people, I suppose. Um,
Yeah,
but
well,
yeah,
you have
that's
the distinct races as well, and that comes through. You know, it's not in some ways Star Trek can be quite lazy with their alien designs in the early series, where it was just a person with a wrinkly nose and their personalities were all the same as every other race, whereas there's clear distinct personalities and ideologies with every race. So you've got the hobbits who are carefree folk who keep to themselves and they like, enjoy the simple things in life. They're farmers. Then you've got the humans who they're always suffering conflict and are very aware of their own mortality. Then you've got the elves who are very, like I said, ethereal. They're like they're from another planet and they're not really concerned that much with the issues of men. And then you've got the dwarves who are very hearty people. They live in the mines all day. All they care about is, getting their gold and just doing their own thing and looking after their clansmen. So you have these very distinct races as well, and they all stand out. So again, that's all because Peter Jackson followed the source material, and that's the main thing. Peter Jackson was all about the source material and being true to the books and Tolkien. If stepping away from the film side, if we look at it from the literary side, the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and all of Tolkien's works have essentially laid the foundation for a lot of medieval fantasy, contemporary medieval fantasy. And there's a lot of derivatives of Tolkien's work. It's very influential. And a lot of the stuff now, there's so many derivatives. Some of it comes across as cliched now. If you've read a lot of fantasy or played a lot of video games, an ancient evil has awoken, a young hero in a small village outside of his remit must go on a grand adventure and all that. Nowadays it seems cliche because it's overdone, but it all links back to Tolkien and that foundation. And that foundation has spawned a lot of contemporary media that we enjoy. I mean, George R. R. Martin, as much as he poo-poos Tolkien, he owes a lot to him. And the influence of that book has led to another wellspring of ideas and creativity, and that was leading to the Lord of the Rings movies, which again have also had a profound effect on contemporary cinema. So you've got basically people who are faithful to Tolkien can, if they're very passionate and very creative, they can create good stuff based on his works and not just derivative shit. There's a lot of it.
There's a great amount of it to do. Yeah. No, I mean I agree. Like if the Lord of the Rings hadn't happened in the 2000s, then something like Game of Thrones never would have got made. It never would have got commissioned. They wouldn't have taken the risk on something like that. But this proved that it could be done, and that it could be done successfully. And it opened the doors for, well, good and bad, I suppose, because apparently the Wheel of Time's meant to be garbage. I've not watched it. But yeah, nobody's got good things to say about that. And it seems like now we're going into the garbage phase of Lord of the Rings. So hey, life's a big old cycle, I suppose.
I mean that could be a good segue. I've got a small bladder. Do you want to read out some of your super chats while I go for a piss? And then
I shall indeed do that.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect timing. All right, give me 1 second here, guys. I'm just going to bring this up.
Yeah.
What we got here? That's all right. We can cover for each other because there'll come a time when even I will have to go for a piss. Right. Okay. So we're looking back through the super chats here. The first one that came in says Black is from Black Sun, and he said, "Weird, you're talking about this film so late, and your happy hour." Um, yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. I mean, it's been one that I've been wanting to do for quite a long time. So here we are. Jude Stevenson, he said, "Vox, hell yes, yeah, indeed, Vox is on tonight, and it's gonna be a good chat. I'm enjoying it so far." RRTNZ said, "Hail, Drunkler and guests. Fellowship of the Ring is my favorite Lord of the Rings film. So many great moments, especially the two incredible last stands, Gandalf and Boromir. What are your favorite moments from Fellowship of the Ring and why? Cheers." Um, I think probably one of my favorites is the fight in the sort of burial chamber in Moria where they have to go up against the cave troll and stuff. I love that whole sequence leading up to it. You know how they find the records room and the place is, it's just the aftermath of a battle, just all these skeletons everywhere. Gandalf finds the book that's like their captain's log almost, and the last entry is just like smeared with blood, and it's just like they are coming. It's just brilliant. It's such a great tension builder. I love the bit where Pippin like drops the skeleton down down the well, and you're just listening to it banging down this thing for like, a good 10-20 seconds. It just shows you how fucking deep it is. I love the whole Moria sequence. Like, it's so eerie, it's so unnerving. They're making their way through this dead underground city, and you get to see all these ruins. It's all silent and quiet and eerie. It's weird. Yeah, brilliant stuff. That's probably one of my favorite bits. um, Trav 101 said, "Off topic, sorry, but when you were new to writing, where did you go to get feedback? How did you know if your writing was up to standard? Help." Um, I mean, when I first started writing, I just went to like online message boards, like creative writing groups, whatever, and I would post up some segments of what I'd written there, and I would get some feedback. That's how I first got into it, and then gradually the stuff I wrote became more sophisticated, longer, and all the rest of it. Um, and I was able to say, right, okay, I'm ready to start, having a crack at doing a full length novel. And when I got it to the point where I was pretty happy with it, that's when I sent it off to literary agents. And yeah, their job then, if they decide to take you on, is that they're going to give you feedback and they're going to polish your book as much as they can, so that when they send it out to publishing houses, it's as good as it can be. So that's kind of their job, to give you that feedback. Yep. Battle of Amon-Hen. Battle is perfection. Yep. Boromir making his last stand. Aragorn taking down the Uruk-hai leader. I fucking love that fight scene. It's quick. It's brutal. Yeah, I love when he stabs the Uruk-hai in the fucking leg and it pulls it out and throws the dagger at him and he just wangs out of the air with his sword. It's like all that stuff. It's so quickly done, but it just looks awesome. Yep. Brilliant stuff. Have I seen the Batman? No, not yet. I'm going to see it tomorrow night. So I'm curious to see what it's going to be like. What's the next one? Yeah, best thing is the music. I mean, the music's fantastic, properly epic. The fight of Gandalf against the Balrog as well is just incredible. I was talking to Mahler about this when we were discussing like CGI versus practical effects, and he was like, "Yeah, there's a scene that could not be done with practical effects. That's CGI all the way, and it looks great." And yeah, I'm inclined to agree. It does look brilliant. Rob H, he said, "No fair drinker. I'm trying to play Horizon, and here you come with this legendary movie. Watched it a few nights ago to forget about the show." Yeah. Well, enjoy Horizon because I've been enjoying it so far. It's a pretty good game. It's a little bit heavy on the girl power aspect of it, but the open world is fantastic. It's really fun to explore. The combat's pretty well done. Yeah, I guess a little bit frustrating having a fucking bow and arrow to go up against robot dinosaurs, but yeah, overall, good fun game. So enjoy that, man. The Outcast Creative said, "Sorry to miss this tonight. Drinker, Lord of the Rings is my favorite trilogy of all time. A man of taste. Opening night of all three in Leicester Square was so special. The audience was so pumped. It's rare now to see people so invested in a film. Yeah, I'm not surprised, to be honest with you. It's just we don't have trilogies like this anymore. I'm just going to check to see if Voxis is back.
Yep, I'm here.
Ah, you're there. Yeah. I didn't want to keep prattling on.
No, it's fine. Well, people are paying you to prattle on. That's the point of Super Chats. So
that is indeed, yeah, and it's quite nice. But yeah, I didn't want to keep you waiting for too long there. Yeah, so I guess when they get the ring to Rivendell, that's when you meet Elrond and stuff, and they have the council to decide what they're going to do. And pretty quickly they realize the only thing we can do with this thing is destroy it. We can't use it because it will corrupt anyone that touches it. And we can't destroy it ourselves because Gimli just tries to whack it with his hammer and it just explodes in front of him. It's great. But it kind of ties into what I was saying earlier. Like Boromir, obviously, he argues in favor of using it because he's already being tempted by the power of it. And they all start arguing over it. And I love how, Frodo's just staring at the ring as all the people around the council are arguing with each other, and you just see like flames projected on the surface of the ring. You can see how the effect it has on people all around it just almost immediately. It's so cool.
But what's also good about the kind of I've got to be careful with this word representation of Sauron is that he has no face. We see him in his spiky armor, but even then there's something inhuman about him. And for the rest of the film, it is this disembodied, fiery eye that doesn't even look like a human eye. So it's a great way of representing this greater threat as something entirely inhuman and in some ways incomprehensible. There's this big giant eye. It reminds me of those descriptions of angels in the Bible, where it's just a fiery ring of eyes. There's something very bizarre about it and unnerving, which really adds to the visual style of the film.
I would say, excuse me, I would agree. It's weird because in the books, you don't even see that. You're just Sauron is just this kind of disembodied presence that's seeking the ring, but he doesn't have a form, and he doesn't actually have a real physical eye at the top of Barad-dûr. It's just kind of metaphorical that's how he perceives the world. But like obviously in the film, they had to give him something. They had to give him some kind of presence, and so that's what you get, that big fiery eye at the top of the tower.
It works. I mean, with a lot of films, you can always imagine, if you've ever worked in film production, you can always imagine some guy from the studio going, can we change this? The audience is going to get bored. And there are moments where you think, you can see a bit of studio meddling, but you can see Jackson going, well, let me do it like this. This might work to appease the popcorn munchers, the brain dead movie viewers who just want the explosions and the visual effects. So yeah, as I said before, the circumstances for making Lord of the Rings was Peter Jackson having to fight the studio on a lot of things. And I think obviously you have to make it a bit more Hollywood-esque. You got to have your big explosions and your visuals. But I think there's a lot of good compromises in this film. And it stays true to the book, even though it's the film medium. Because that's really difficult. We've seen a lot of films get adapted to the big screen that are based on books, and they miss too much. They don't cast it right, and they don't do the source material justice. And there's always going to be compromises. And Lord of the Rings does not compromise that much. It just adds, your Hollywood moments, and it cuts out some of it separates the wheat from the chaff, as it were. So it gets rid of some of the filler, but it gives you a very concise and entertaining adaptation. And that's really hard to do these days.
Yeah. No, it really is. And I think nowadays, particularly because so much money's invested in films, there's that desire to play it as safe as possible and just deliver those big crowd-pleasing moments, like the action scenes, the explosions, all that. Probably The Hobbit's a good example of that, of just that overwhelming desire for profit and to milk something that doesn't really support what you're trying to do. Yeah, and you lose the kind of integrity of the story, for the sake of making a quick buck, essentially. And it's kind of a shame. It's sad to see what becomes of otherwise good stories. There was a question here I was going to answer, actually. Couldn't they have just sealed the ring in a box and thrown it in the ocean? Not really, because they actually discussed that in the books. I know it's not really addressed in the film, but they say something to the effect that, like, there's there's things lurking in the deep ocean that Sauron can control. And so I guess the implication is, like, even if you fling it into the ocean, he can have some monster just retrieve it for him. Ultimately, it has to be destroyed, and that's the only option.
He's God in a sense. He is a almost godlike being. He's everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in the Shire. He still has a presence, and that's why this threat is overwhelming, and why Frodo is so completely out of your depth. You've got to take on God, and all you've got are hairy feet and a sword that glows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
That's the way Tolkien intended it, though. Like, the hobbits are the most unthreatening and the least sort of warlike and the least dominant species on Middle Earth. But ultimately, the entire fate of civilization hangs on one of them. And I think that's a great message. I think it's a great idea. It's like, you don't have to be the strongest warrior or the greatest leader or the most wise thinker to effect, like, great change in the world. It can be the most humble of people that just happen to be in the right place at the right time. I think that's pretty good. Like,
Yeah.
Frodo rises to the occasion, and he really gets put through the mill over the course of the story, particularly in Return of the King. You get to see his sheer determination and grit, to keep going. One of my favorite scenes, I think, in the entire trilogy is when they're climbing Mount Doom, and they both collapse, and, like, Frodo just looks up and he sees this enormous mountain towering above him with, like, smoke and flame, like, coming out the top. It just seems like this impossible challenge stretching before him, and he starts to crawl up the slope. Like, this is a guy at the very tail end of his strength and his endurance, but he's still keeping going because he's that determined to finish his mission. I think that just speaks volumes about what he is as a character by that point. And I loved it. That was brilliant.
Yeah. And but also, it's not just about Frodo. It's also there are multiple characters and they all work together. They're all individuals, but there's a kind of collective aspect to it. It's not collectivism, but you've just got these very strong-willed individuals who come together for a common cause. They set aside their differences. It's a very positive message, because at the end of the day, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, this is going to sound very twee and very gay, but it's about friendship at the end of the day. That's what the whole book is about. It's about, again, this is like something out of My Little Pony, but it's about the power of friendship. And, of course, having good cardio. Cardio is important, as we've seen in these films.
That definitely will help you. But, yeah, like, exactly as you say. And it's not... This is going to shock you guys for living as we do in 2022, but people of the same gender can be friends with each other and risk their lives for each other and have a really strong bond of friendship without being gay for each other. I know it's shocking. I know it's crazy, but it can happen. And that's what these movies exemplify. It's the fellowship. And time after time, these people risk their lives for each other, and in some cases give their lives for each other, because that's the strength of the friendship that they have and the bond that they have, which is pretty fucking cool. And I don't think you have to bring, like, sexual politics into something like that. It's silly, something that I guess is meant to be a bit more pure than that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you always get those types of people over-analyzing everything. Everything must be gay. And yeah, if you invest in postmodernist thinking and you think that way, you can turn anything gay. I mean, yeah, maybe Lord of the Rings is gay. It is about a young boy who keeps offering his ring to reluctant men and trying to seduce them with it. If you want to go down that route, but you can apply that to anything. It's nonsense. It's death of the author bullshit, and I don't go with that. And again, it is about respecting Tolkien, and he's dead, and someone's got to respect his wishes and how he wanted that universe to be portrayed. And yes, you're absolutely right. You can You know, I mean, Lord of the Rings, it's like going on a pub crawl with your mate, except, you know, you're going to a big fiery pit at the end of it. That's all. But yeah.
You know, I don't know if you've seen The World's End, like one of the sort of Cornetto trilogy movies. Like I've reviewed it with Mahler, but I'd love to see that transposed into a fantasy setting. That would just be fantastic. Like just a bunch of drunken assholes that have got to do this epic quest while getting more and more pissed along the way.
Well, I was looking up some of the writers for this new Amazon shit, and one of them wrote an episode for The Sopranos, and I was just saying I would love like the mafia in Middle Earth. It'd certainly be more interesting than what Amazon's putting out, but I would love, you know, the criminal side of Middle Earth or something like that. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
you know, a load of Italian Americans going, "Hey, where's this a freaking ring? Eh? You fanuc?"
or show it from the point of view of like the orcs or something. Like they're just conscripted into doing this. Like one of them has a change of heart. He's like, I don't want to be an evil conqueror. I just want to have fun, you know.
Yeah. Why can't we see the mundane stuff? You know. Well,
yeah.
I mean,
or like,
Sauron's got a big empire. Surely there's an administrative aspect to that. Where can't we see him doing the paperwork or delegating people to, you know, to do odd jobs for him? You know, eventually he's going to take over Middle Earth. But are you going to build new hospitals and schools for the orcs? you could make it really fucking dull.
there's you know, like they could be arguing over what kind of stationery they're going to use in Barad-dûr, you know, like, or what kind of letterhead do we want on our official correspondence. He's like, oh, for fuck's sake, I've got more important things. I'm trying to conquer Middle Earth here, goddammit.
Glasgow, please sign Sherry's birthday card. Oh, very well.
Yeah. Happy 5,000th birthday.
Yeah, Amazon, don't hire us.
Yeah.
We'll only make it worse.
But yeah, I mean, it's again, it ties into that light and dark thing. So they you know, they leave Rivendell, they leave the safety of that place, that lovely, like, gorgeous looking environment, and then it's off to try and climb over a mountain, which they're not able to do because Saruman's a total asshole and he conjures up a storm for them, and he just basically yells at the clouds until they you know, pelt them with snow and avalanches and stuff. And so that forces them down into Moria, which I think for most people it's like their favorite segment of the movie. Just this cool, really ominous underground dead city. You know, you can see what it once was. You can see that it was lived in, but it's just, you know, this tomb now filled with skeletons. And yeah, just you can tell that something's going to go wrong right off the bat when they head in there, and Gimli's like, "Oh yes, we'll be feasting with my ancestors," and having expecting
like
beer.
You're expecting like a surprise birthday party, and what you get is a box full of turds and nails. That's what
exactly.
you get. It's such a because they've gone through so much shit. They almost got killed in an avalanche, and again, you're waiting for that kind of reprieve. Just like, oh, okay, where's the next happy bit? No, what happens is a fucking cave troll tries to cave your skull in. You've got all these little orcs and goblins nibbling at your toes. And it's really claustrophobic, as well in that tomb as well. You've got this cave troll that takes up most of the room, swinging a massive club around, and people getting just thrown against walls. There's so many shattered spine there that every chiropractor in Middle Earth will never be out of business. It's just an absolute clusterfuck, but in a good way, not in a I can't make heads or tails of what's going on. But it's just fantastic action scenes, and the set design is brilliant. That bit when they're trying to jump over that broken bridge as well, that cavernous area, and you've got the heat from the lower parts of the mines, very atmospheric. Yeah, it's a great scene. It's the highlight.
Isn't that interesting as well, though, right? Because that scene you're referencing, they're on like a big stone staircase that's crumbling, and I think Aragorn and Frodo get trapped on like one section of it, and they have to wait for it to start to swing, you know, towards their friends, and they just have to hope that it happens to swing in their direction as it collapses. And you really you feel the tension there, because it's like, oh, this is a real world where they could fall at any moment and die. Compare that to The Hobbit, where the main group, they get flung off cliffs and stuff, and they fall down like this massive chasm, and they just happen to be in like a a section of bridge or something that just so happens to collapse just nicely in line with the rocks around them, and they're totally fine when they tumble out at the bottom. There's absolutely no tension there because you realize immediately this is a dumb cartoon where nobody can come to harm. Whereas in Lord of the Rings, it really feels like this is got some stakes to it. These are not superhumans who can survive anything. They can be killed just as easily as you or I.
Yeah. The scale as well. This mine is treacherous. I mean, when they're crossing that really narrow bridge, a part of me was just thinking in health and safety mode, and I was thinking, those dwarves, they really should have put a railing in there. That's really precarious. I don't feel comfortable with this.
That is that if we had to do it, we wouldn't be sprinting across like them. We'd be down on our hands and knees, just like edging along. Like, oh fuck, this is really high.
I have a fear of heights. It's just like, oh, my knee. Guys, go ahead. Fuck this. I'm out of it.
It's great because the book describes this really well, and it explains why the bridge is like that. It's designed so that only one person can go at a time, and it's a defensive measure. So if the place ever gets invaded, literally the only way into the city is across that one tiny bridge, and so all you need is a few archers on the other side. You can hold them off pretty much forever until you run out of arrows, at least. So that was the whole premise behind it. But it's reflected in the movie. It doesn't give you the explanation, but it's kind of cool for people that have read the books because you get to see it. But yeah, like I wouldn't be sprinting across that thing. But I love the entrance of the Balrog as well. They're surrounded by goblins, and they're about to get attacked, and then these things just fucking scatter, and you just see this glow way off in the distance, like slowly moving through the pillars in the darkness, and you know something really awful's about to appear. And it's great. It takes its time building this thing up, and then when it does show up, damn, it just looks beautiful. I mean, beautiful in a bad way, but man, it's a great CGI creation. This big demon with flames shooting out of it from every direction.
It's elegant in its monstrosity, and it's wonderful. These big glaring flames, but it's a demon, and again, you get that sense of scale. It's not a tiny thing. It doesn't show up and it's only a meter tall, and it just goes. No, it's huge. It dwarfs everyone.
If Rian Johnson had directed this movie, that's exactly what you would have got.
Hey, subverted your expectations. Ooh, clever.
Clever director. There we go. Chad Balrog being cool for 10 minutes versus the Virgin Smaug being alpha for 30 minutes. Yeah. He talks a good game to Smaug, but he's shit. That's when you lose Gandalf as well. He should have backed off that bridge a bit quicker. Counted his chickens before they'd hatched. It's like makes the Balrog fall to its doom. And right at the last second, the whip gets him, pulls him off the edge. And it's exactly how it's done in the books. It's well described, and he just goes like, "Fly, you fools!" and then off he goes.
And you need that moment. I mean, it follows the beats of a lot of traditional storytelling, the monomyth and all that, and certainly one archetypal character is that tutor guardian figure, and that's what Gandalf is to Frodo. But at some point during a venture, yes, it's tried and true, and it's a bit cliche, but it still works. And there's a reason it works, because it has an impact on you emotionally, because the audience puts themselves in the shoes of Frodo. And when you lose Gandalf, it's like losing your own personal guardian or tutor. It's Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid and all that. You've seen that archetype before, and it's still impactful. And you have to have that scene, though, because that's when, things get serious, and it's time for the student has been given their lessons as much as they can, but they have to go and fend for themselves. And at that point, Frodo feels the weight of this. And that's why this ring becomes more of a burden, because now this is the technique. I mean, spoilers, Gandalf will be fine. He'll be in the sequels, but for them, it is the first death of the group. So far, they've had close calls, but no one's actually died. And Frodo feels slightly guilty that they're in this situation because of this ring, and he decided, I'll get rid of it. And that plays heavily, obviously, in the next section when Boromir is saying, "Oh, this burden's too much for you. I'll take care of it," and all that. But he's still steadfast in his resolve, and he thinks back to what Gandalf had said, like, this is your quest now, this is your thing, and this kind of stoicism of, well, this is your lot in life, this is your destiny. Sometimes you just got to go with the flow. So yeah, it's a very poignant moment in the movie.
Yeah. I think that's exactly as you say. You've got a mentor character that can get your protagonist up to a point, just like Obi-Wan Kenobi, for example. They're there to get them on their path, but then they have to walk that path by themselves. And so that mentor has to be taken away for a time. And that's when Frodo starts to, one, he has to carry the burden of the ring by himself. And he realizes not that long afterwards that the fellowship can't help him much more. They are starting to get pulled apart by the power of this ring. They're starting to get corrupted by it. And he can't put them through that anymore. And he's going to have to do the rest of this by himself. And it's a great moment. He's got opportunities to stay with people, to stay with Pippin and Merry, to stay with Aragorn, but they all realize that he has to go by himself, and this is something he has to do by himself. And yeah, I think that plays out really well. And you get that little segment when they're with Galadriel, and again, she kind of warns Frodo that Boromir is going to try and take the ring from him. You can see that Boromir's starting to come apart as a character. The ring's really got its influence over him. And I do love the moment as well when she is tempted by the power of the ring because he wants to give it to her. He's at that point, he's like, no, fuck this. I don't want this thing anymore. You take it. And you can see how much it drains her to have to turn it down. She's shaken visibly by having to refuse it. And that's the hold it has on people. Because I think, from what I understand, the more powerful you are as a person, as a sorcerer, whatever it might be, the more dangerous the ring is for you, the more of a hold it has on you right off the bat. That's why with something like a hobbit, they can resist it for longer because they're not powerful creatures. They're not dangerous creatures. They're humble. And that's the ring's got less of a pull on them as a result.
Yeah. But they're a simple folk, and Frodo is seen as pure of heart as well. He doesn't really have any vices. He's not, he doesn't swear. He doesn't. He defends himself, but he doesn't outright attack people. And yeah, I think Bilbo says to him at some point, you're pure of spirit or something like that before he even gets the ring. And
there's a real.
Continue.
I was going to say there's a real implication in the book, and I think a little bit of it in the movie as well, because they talk about pity is what stayed Bilbo's hand, because he obviously got the ring from Gollum back during his first adventure during The Hobbit, and he had the opportunity to kill Gollum, but he didn't take it. He just took the ring, ultimately won it off him. The fact that he basically, an act of pity is how he came to possess the ring. Apparently that's what reduced its hold over him. It gave it less of an inroad into his mind and protected him for a long time. Whereas when Gollum first got his hands on it, he actually killed someone, like it was his friend or his brother or something who found it originally, and Gollum just straight up killed him in order to take it off him. And so because it was an act of cruelty and malice that got him the ring in the first place, it immediately had a much quicker hold over him. And again, I just think it's such a great metaphor for, I guess, just how people conduct their lives. And if you're more pure of heart like that, then you're going to be better able to withstand all these awful kind of temptations.
Indeed. Could you do it, critical drinker? If I gave you that magical ring, what would you do with it?
Could I drink it? I think I would have passed out face down in the dirt before I would have got my hands on it anyway. So I don't think I would have even come into possession of it, or I would have forgotten where I put it or something. I'm pretty bad that way. So I don't think it would have gotten an opportunity to get a hold of me. Or even if it did, it'd be like, fucking hell, the only place this guy ever goes is to the local pub. It never takes me anywhere.
Yeah, someone would be pissed.
Yeah, it would abandon me pretty quickly and try and find someone else, I guess.
Is there anyone I can corrupt in the pub? Oh, they're already corrupted. Fuck.
Yeah.
What a waste.
Literally, none of these guys travel more than like a mile in their whole lives.
What does he do? Oh, YouTube. No.
Yeah. Just
does
the ring
an army?
Sat on my desk while I'm editing videos all day long. It's like, oh fuck, I picked the wrong guy here. Yeah, but that's, you know, again, like it all ties into this great theme of like the corrupting influence of power, I suppose. That's what the ring represents. And yeah, again, like I said, it's not an enemy that you can fight with weapons. It's not something that you can wrestle against with strength or anything like that. Its danger lies in how it tempts you and it gets inside your mind. And I just think that makes for a great antagonist. Like the ring ultimately is the antagonist of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so cool. Like as a concept,
it's not your traditional antagonist, is it? It's not like a Bond villain, like, oh, that guy's evil because he's got a scar on his face and he's got nukes. It's something more than that. It's not as plain or obvious, and it's got influence that isn't like giving someone a bribe. You are teasing them, you're seducing them with power. You know, if you have this is one ring to rule them all. This gives you power, but it's a false premise of power, because actually that ring enslaves you really to the whims of Sauron. So yeah, it's all about the seduction of power and corruption. These rather lofty themes, but still you still have that the core theme of, if you are true of spirit, if you've got good friends by your side, you don't need any of that stuff. You know, you don't need power. You don't. Take pleasure in the simple things. We should all be like the hobbits, maybe not so, you know, lacking in height, but, you know, just take pleasure in the simple things. You don't need to be the commander of an orc army. Just, you know, have your ale, have your dank weed, or what's the name of the weed they have? I don't think it's dank weed. I think I might be a bit confused
there. What is it called? It's not Holborn. Oh man, I'll never remember it off the top of my head. But yeah,
obviously,
I know what you mean.
On this channel, we do not condone drug use. Alcohol, yeah, that's fine.
No. We're just saying that like lifestyles are available that the hobbits lived, and yeah, you can do that today. And I don't know, maybe Tolkien did it as well. Who knows? Yeah.
Live simply is the idea.
There we go. There it is. Old Tovey. That's the one. Old Tovey. And Long Bottom Leaf. There we go. Yeah, love it. But that's exactly what the hobbits were. They were simple people who enjoyed the simple pleasures of life. You know, good food, good ale, and I guess good company. And they didn't ask for much. And yeah, maybe that's what makes them like harder to corrupt, because they don't have aspirations of power and glory and all the rest of it. Whereas a guy like Boromir was driven by you know, the expectations of his people and his father and what he wanted to accomplish for them. That's how the ring got to him, and that's why ultimately he tries to take it from Frodo. And it's only because Frodo's able to slip the ring on and turn invisible that he can escape from him. But yeah, that's the breaking of the fellowship there. That's when Frodo has to leave, and that's when you get that last stand on Am Hen. And it's just a great battle scene. I think we talked about it a little bit before. You know, Boromir redeems himself by helping to protect Merry and Pippin, and damn, that dude just doesn't quit. He gets shot like 3 times with arrows, and he just keeps trucking.
Spoilers, obviously, Boromir dies, but he is played by Sean Bean, so I don't know what the fuck you're expecting. He dies in everything apart from Sharp. So
it had to happen. It's
not really a spoiler.
Yeah, Sharp was great though. I fucking love Sharp.
Oh, no. It's a great drinking game as well. Every time it says bastard, That northern
Yeah.
bastard. That's when,
Yeah.
that's when you take a drink. I wouldn't recommend it. You might end up in hospital, but yeah, good drinking game there. But yeah, it's a great fight. It's always shitty, though, when they show Lord of the Rings on terrestrial TV here in the UK. And they show it at Christmas, because usually around Christmas time, they show things like Jurassic Park and stuff. They always edit out, because it's before the watershed, before 9 p.m. They always cut out the decapitation part. And that's really...
fuck, that's the best... Well, it's not the best part,
Exactly.
but it's an awesome part.
But you can't... So they play it at Christmas. Like, you just cut out the best bit. They usually just cut it, and you just... Magically, his head just pops off. It just takes you out of it. So no, if you have to watch Lord of the Rings, yeah, definitely get the Blu-ray or something. I would say digital, but you have to be careful.
Watch it. Yeah, if you're in the UK, watch it on Sky, because then you'll get the unedited version. But yeah, I love that fight between Aragorn and the Uruk-hai leader. Because he's got no mercy. He stabs it in the fucking leg, and then he hacks its arm off, and then it's like, nah, I'm gonna fucking bite your face off, and then he just has to like slice its head off to finish it off. That thing, it just isn't gonna quit, and it shows you how fucking tough these things are. Sure hope they don't have to face an army of like 10,000 of them in the next movie. Yeah. But yeah, that's the climactic battle of it, and it's a great way for the movie to finish up, I think. Boromir sacrifices himself. He redeems himself as much as he was tempted by the power of the ring. He was able to overcome that to help his friends. And Aragorn is smart enough to know that Frodo has to leave by himself. He can't accompany him any further. And his destiny and his fate is like heading in a different direction. And I think it's such a cool way for people who have not read the books to finish up that film, because it ends on a note of I guess hope, but real uncertainty at the same time. This fellowship has been splintered apart, and it's left to really just Frodo and Sam to journey all the way to Mordor by themselves, to try and finish this mission, and that's a hell of a difficult task, obviously.
And obviously, from a movie perspective, it's a great hook for the next trilogy, because now at this point you're so invested, and then obviously this leads into the rest of the trilogy, and the characters become stronger, the chemistry is there, the friendships, and the stakes get bigger, and it's that. And just like the Fellowship of the Ring is the start of the journey, so too in a trilogy sense, that film starts off an even bigger journey. That was just a taste of what's to come.
Yep.
And there's a reason that trilogy is held in such high regard and has got all those awards and accolades, because it deserved it. Some people would argue that the Fellowship of the Ring, and by extension the trilogy, are possibly perfect to some extent. I mean,
I think
gotta be careful, obviously, with that phrase, saying something's perfect.
I know. I don't think anything's ever perfect, but like from the mechanics of storytelling, and from a pacing point of view, and from given that sense of scale and epic adventure and stuff, I can't think of many ways you could do it better. The fact that each movie keeps raising the stakes, and the scale of the battles that are involved, and what they're fighting for, but also being able to tell these really like personal stories, or these really low level relationships between like Frodo and Sam, or Aragorn and Arwen, or the Merry and Pippin, like all these little friendships and relationships and character arcs and stuff. Like, there's so fucking much going on throughout these three movies, but they managed to keep all of them in mind. You never like lose one character amongst the rest, and every one of them pretty much gets a satisfying conclusion to their arc. And just the sheer amount of storytelling effort that it takes to do something like that and balance all these different things, if it's incredible. That's what I respect so much about the Lord of the Rings as a trilogy.
And now, I suppose we have to discuss the rather horrible elephant in the room. Where do we go from here? And
Oh
what has
fuck
happened
this!
to the
I'm gonna
franchise?
need more of this. I'm gonna need more of this shit.
Come on, you two, chat. Let's pour one out for Mr. Tolkien.
Hey, chat. What's your opinion on the Lord of the Rings show? Do you think it's gonna be good? I'll just wait for the answers there. You guys can take it from here. It's fine. I'll just sit back for a minute. There we go.
Yes, let the hate flow through you.
It's I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I would love to just go into it with an optimistic view of the world and think, let's give it a go. Let's give it a go. You know, they've got a lot of money invested in this. They wouldn't throw that amount of cash at it if they thought it was going to be garbage. And surely they're not that dumb that they would fuck up something like Lord of the Rings. But then there's the other part of me that's like, it's Amazon and it's the year 2022, and our Lord hath forsaken us, and now we're cast adrift in an ocean of shittiness in terms of entertainment. So yeah, I'm just looking at chat here and it's like, no, woke, no, absolute shit, F. Fart.
Yeah.
The people is spoken. I don't know, man. Like, what's your take on it? What do you hope for?
I have the same stance as you. Now, obviously, with what's coming out of Hollywood and media at the moment, it's very easy to go, it's going to be shit. And we've got enough examples already, especially of popular franchises, of when they get a reboot or a sequel, that it's just terrible. And we've been burnt so many times. Now, there could be a chance that it is good. You know, we can't completely rule that. We haven't seen the full thing. However, and this is the reason why we're all jumping to these conclusions, is what we've seen of the production side and the marketing side. Amazon's new Lord of the Rings series, The Ring of Power, it raises more red flags than communist China. And there are loads. And I think it's worth going through these to kind of just make our point solid of why we think it's not going to do well. So the first issue is, obviously you said Amazon have put in a lot of money. And this isn't just change that you find at the back of your sofa. The deal that Amazon had with the Tolkien estate, who now run it after Tolkien's death, they took Amazon to the cleaners with how much they were asking. So the contract with Amazon is this. Every season, I think they paid, what is it, $250 million per season? Or something like that. And they have a 5-season contract. So that is $1 billion. Now, that holds the world record for the most expensive television series ever made. Now, just because you throw a lot of money at something doesn't mean it's going to be good.
Just ask Tatiana.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we seen it follows this thinking that is very prevalent in Hollywood and has created this kind of film bubble that if you put in a lot of money and it's a big franchise, you'll get double back. It's worked for the Marvel movies, certainly, but there's still more costs to come. So production, marketing, and all that. And the marketing so far has not been good. The other red flag with Amazon is when they bought the rights to it, they did not have a creative team set up. They essentially bought it and then said, okay, now we need a producer and writer. They simply just wanted the IP. They didn't have a fresh-faced auteur director, someone like Peter Jackson, coming up and saying, guys, give me money for this very risky scheme. I got this vision. I've got all this. They didn't have that. They didn't have some young upstart. And the actual producers they have got do not carry any clout or weight to their name. I've looked into who's producing it. And some of the writers and producers, you can't find anything on that.
Yeah, they've got fuck all credits to their name. I did try and look them up myself.
Exactly. And you're just thinking, well, you're either really good and we just don't know it, or you're really good at sucking dick and you've managed to climb that corporate ladder. I don't know why. I mean, it seems very foolhardy. It's one thing to give someone with very little to their name, maybe a few movies to their name, a multi-billion-dollar franchise, and then just to give it to a nobody without much to their name, that's very risky. And again, some of the writing stuff, if you look at their background, some of them haven't got much of a credit, and some of the stuff they have worked on, there isn't much to it, not much substance. And you think, well, are you really a good fit? And it makes me think that this is not being done as a creative endeavor, but simply because, again, this ties back to what we said previously, the Lord of the Rings franchise, that name, it holds weight. It has a lot connected to it. And it is the only franchise at the moment that hasn't been completely sullied. Your Star Wars and things like that have been run into the ground. That's the next big name. And Amazon want skin in the game when it comes to having their own medieval fantasy show. Now, HBO Plus, they've got, of course, Game of Thrones. Then you've got Netflix. They've got The Witcher. What does Amazon have? Nothing similar to that setting. With that said, what I found was very interesting is they actually poached one of the, I think it was either one of the directors or one of the, yes, I think it was one of the directors from the Witcher 3 series. So clearly some sort of marketing goon and not some creative has gone, we'll get this person because they're used to making shows of this caliber. So the talent they're taking on board is not talent that is there for creative reasons, but more for marketing and from a business sense. You see what I mean? So that is why we're saying we don't think this is going to be good, because this is not coming from a place of creativity or passion, but some guy in a suit checking out marketing data and, of course, focus groups, things like that, demographics and all that. And so at the moment, we're left with very little substance, especially when it comes to marketing as well. So far, we've had one teaser and one proper trailer, and I still don't know much about it. All I know is it's a prequel. It's at 2,000 years before the Lord of the Rings movies and that kind of era, and it's diverse. That's all I know. So when I ask people, well, what's happening? It's diverse. Okay, what are the characters like? Oh, they're diverse. Okay, what about the story? It's a very diverse cast in the story. Right, okay, what else happens? A lot of diversity. Yes, I see. What else is there? Diversity. Shut up! That's all there is. All I see is diversity, diversity.
And that's not a substitute for a story. And yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head when you said this is a show that's getting made because it conforms to like advertising analysis. You know, they looked at it and they said, right, the Lord of the Rings brand is strong. It's one of the few brands that's still holding up there. We could just go ahead and make a show about it. We can churn out season after season. It'll capitalize on that name, and it's going to be the next Game of Thrones, because everybody wants to be the next Game of Thrones. You know, the Wheel of Time ain't going to do it because everyone seems to hate it. The Witcher is probably not going to do it either. Realistically, it hasn't really captured that mainstream appeal. This is the show that's going to do it. And it's not because they had a story that they wanted to tell. It's just, we'll figure out the story later. We just need to get those building blocks in place of the Lord of the Rings name, that world, and as many as the characters as we can work into it. And it's just going to capitalize on that. And we'll figure out some kind of story to tie it all together. Just get me a couple of writers that can do something. Okay, these two guys who have got like 3 credits to their name. Yeah, fine. That'll be fine. That'll be fine. And we'll go from there. And yeah, like you say, you know, the only thing that they seem to be focusing on with these things like the Vanity Fair article is like how diverse the cast is and how it's going to reflect the world we live in today. Well, I'm sorry to be the one to break this to you, Vanity Fair and Amazon. We do not watch epic fantasy series because we want to see the world that we live in today in front of us. We want to see fantasy worlds. We want to see escapism. We want to escape to somewhere that's not here. Because the real world is kind of dumb and kind of shitty right now. And so that's why we watch things like this, to get away from it. So the moment you start saying that you're going to just reflect today's world with all of its gripes and all of its hang-ups and all of its identity politics and all of its complaining, you're really alienating people by doing that, and that seems to just be the worst kind of marketing you can do for a TV show. I can't think of a way to ruin something quicker than saying that about it. I think Voxis is dead. I've killed him. I've bored him to death, I think, by ranting too much.
No, that's fine. Rant on. That's good. Sorry, problems with my microphone there. Yes.
Oh, no, that's cool.
And another thing as well is when it comes to this idea of representation and diversity, but I feel that it is coming from a very disingenuous place. Now, I'm caught in a difficult position here because I have respect for artistic integrity. So if you would tell me that you want to do your own fantasy setting and you want it really diverse, you want gay elves, you want them to be Hispanic gay elves on a merry adventure. Okay, I respect that. That's your artistic vision. But from what we're seeing, this isn't coming from a place of artistic integrity. You are not putting in this diversity for the sake of creativity and an artistic vision. For the start, we have no idea what your artistic vision is. You've haphazardly put this together. It's like what happened with Disney's Star Wars, The Force Awakens. We'll figure it out. Just put some plot points along the way, mystery boxes, and we'll figure it out later. It doesn't work that way. But in terms of this diversity aspect, you are not putting in these diverse characters for the sake of something creative. They could be great characters. If they're great characters, we can get behind them. But if you are putting in these characters for the sake of diversity, it will show. It will be purely tokenism. And I believe that it is generally not coming from a place of creativity and the fact that you want to have interesting characters. Here's what I think is going on. Let's see if I can find it. Here is... I'll send you a link in the chat. This is Amazon Studios inclusion policy. Basically saying, if you want to make a show with Amazon Studios, you have to be inclusive. So that means if you have a specific vision, let's say you want to tell a tale of medieval fantasy coming from the Viking era, with that European aesthetic and all that. Well, I'm sorry, you have to have you're going to have some diversity there. You have to have black characters. You're going to have gay characters. You're going to have gay Viking characters in wheelchairs. And if your artistic vision is stuck on just having Europeans, I'm sorry, you can't have that artistic vision. You can't have it your way. You have to appeal to that. Another thing as well is, are you hiring good, diverse actors? Are these actors you're hiring have got some merit to them? Are you hiring them because they are good actors or because of the color of their skin? I'm quite kind of shocked that this is a multi-billion franchise and some of these diverse actors they've got don't have much to their name. The big hoo-ha over the Black Dwarf Queen, is it? That seems to be doing the rounds. She only has one other thing to her name. Did you know that?
No, I mean, I'm not surprised.
She's only been in one. So, Sophia Nomvet, if you check out her IMDb, known for The Lord of the Rings, The Ring of Power, The Tempest, 2018. So the last time she saw work was 4 years ago for a TV special that I don't think anyone watched, and she played Stefania. And it basically looks like a panto play. So that person who you are putting front and center on your marketing, they don't have much to their name.
This is a fascinating document. I'm just trying to read through it quickly, just to give you a couple of highlights for the people who are watching. You
can put it in your chat, maybe. Other people can have a look at it.
Can I share this actually?
Yeah.
So share...
I did my homework, Drinker.
There we go. Yeah, share screen, and yeah, so you should be able to see it. Entire screen. Yeah, just let me know when you can see it. Yeah, so this is the document that you sent, and it's when it talks about casting. So the thing that jumped out at me here was to reduce invisibility in entertainment, and where the story allows, we aim to include one character from each of the following categories for speaking roles of any size, and at minimum 50% of the total of these should be women. Yeah, okay. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or gender non-conforming, non-binary. 2, person with a disability. And 3, regionally underrepresented racial, ethnic, cultural groups. E.g. in the US, 3 of the following: Black, Latinx, Indigenous, Middle Eastern, North African, or Asian Pacific Islander, or multiracial. A single character can fill one or more of these identities. This is how you end up... Whoa, fucking hell. Sorry, I've ended up with infinity screen there. Right, I'm going to stop sharing, just so that it doesn't mess things up too much. But yeah, this is how you're ending up with black dwarf ladies and black elves on screen, because they have got a quota of people that they have to fill.
I told you.
And it doesn't matter if it actually conforms to the world that they're creating. It's just get them in there, because we have to meet this somehow. And if it doesn't meet the criteria of Tolkien's work, who fucking cares? We'll just alter it. Because we own the rights to it now, so we can do whatever we want. And this is what you end up with. And when people push back against it, they're not trying to be racist and say, I don't want to see black people on screen, or I don't want to see women on screen, or anything like that. They're just not meant to be in these roles because they were never written that way. And you're trying to bend the source material around your requirements now.
But it's tokenism, though. You are not
it absolutely
hiring,
is, yeah.
You're not hiring these actors or developing characters out of a sense of creativity, but ticking boxes. And because some marketing goon has told you, well, we need to appeal to these certain demographics because we know these demographics have disposable income. They will buy our product if we appeal to them. But then this obviously ties into the larger idea of representation and this rather self-centered notion that you cannot enjoy a piece of media if you are not represented accurately on screen. Unless, for some people, unless you yourself, unless you are on screen in some form or another, they can't enjoy it, which is pure nonsense. It shows a lack of empathy on that person if they cannot relate to someone. Is the human condition not universal? I don't understand this way of thinking that you can't enjoy something unless you're represented on screen. When I'm watching, the classic film Old Boy, a South Korean film, I'm not watching it and going, this is a really good film. But you know what? I can't really get into it. There's an awful lot of Koreans on screen. If only they were all white. No, that idea does not hold water, and it's stupid anyway. Diversity doesn't automatically make something good or relatable. Take Squid Game, for example. That was the talk of Netflix. Where's the diversity there? Everyone was Korean. There was one Indian bloke, but everyone loved it. Everyone was fascinated with it, and the cast is very in terms of mono-racial. Really, it's very. There's not much diversity there, but you don't need it. You can still enjoy it. You've seen the movie Blade. You're not black. Did you enjoy it?
Exactly, yeah. Like, Blade's an awesome character, and I don't need to look like him or come from his background. I don't need to be like a black immortal vampire, or daywalker, in order to empathize with where he's at in life. That's not how humans work. But that's how they want to portray it, these people, and it's just straw man arguments to justify whatever like screwed up agenda they want to try and push. And it's so transparent and it's so fake. And this is the thing that's so frustrating about it, because everyone can kind of see it, but no one can argue against it, because if they do, then they themselves get labeled as being racist, or that they've got some kind of problem with representation on screen, for questioning it. And so it becomes this weird thing that's tolerated, and it just gets more and more absurd with each passing year. It's a crazy situation that we find ourselves in now.
But it's a situation that gets played out time and time again, for simply because it's great marketing. We are now in the age where the thinking for a lot of these marketers is, any publicity is good publicity. Doesn't matter if it's negative, as long as there is audience engagement, as long as it adheres to these metrics. When you see this stuff, it's almost like you can see a play-by-play from some sort of handbook these marketers have been given. And it basically details an entire marketing strategy that we've seen play out time and time again. And the worst thing is, it's effective. Stop me if you've heard this. So, A popular franchise gets acquired. Suddenly, there is hype generated on social media, but then also you start to see these articles. Some might say they're clickbait. And these articles, they seem to feature things a lot to do with identity politics, which is quite derisive. It gets people chattering and angry fingers typing. Suddenly, on Twitter, there's this sort of outrage. Some cynical people might say, oh, this is a bit manufactured. Suddenly, people are talking more about this product. They're talking about it negatively and saying, why is this a big deal? Then suddenly, a group of people who may have been infiltrated by other marketers are suddenly saying, well, you're not real fans. You're not a true Scotsman. This is what this product has always been about. Join us. Because if you don't like this product, you're clearly a bigot. There's some moral issue here. To endorse this corporate schlock, you have to be morally upstanding against all these isms and all this stuff. Suddenly, you've got people talking. Suddenly, the search engine algorithm is picking up this new IP. And basically what happens is then some person, usually a CEO of a company, is at a desk and they're saying, how are we doing with marketing? And some young upstart says, well, we're doing very well. Look at all this engagement. Now, this CEO is probably as old as me and just as out of touch and probably doesn't get how social media works. And they go, is that good? Yes, yes. Look at this audience engagement. This product is great. And look at all these millions of views. That'll definitely be money. What they don't tell them is that engagement is negative, but they don't care because people are talking about it and it's bumping up the search algorithm. Again, we have seen Star Wars and various other franchises be co-opted by these horrible marketeers and disingenuous people who turn everything into a cultural war. And it doesn't matter if it's negative publicity, as long as people are talking about it, just so they can get bums on seats. And then the product comes out and is crap, and people forget about it until the next thing that comes out that is diverse and stunning and brave. We've seen this so many times. Do you know what it reminds me of? North Korea. I know that's a bit of a stretch, but bear with me where I'm going with this. In North Korea propaganda, Kim Jong whatever, he'll go to some shitty little factory, probably a factory that, puts the cream in the donuts. But the media will hype it up as this next great thing, They will say, oh, glorious leader, he is at the donut filling factory. Look, isn't this a glorious day for us? It's the most amazing thing for that week. And then he'll fuck off and it's forgotten about. Until next week, he goes to the tractor factory, which makes the best things for the common people of this land. Isn't it stunning and brave? It's a big moment in history. Then it's forgotten about in a week. The next week goes to some other pissant place. Time and time again, we see this marketing strategy of being derisive, putting people into groups, making it seem like consuming this product makes you morally upstanding and sticking up for things and supporting minorities and things like that. At the end of the day, the only thing you are supporting are corporate interests and money men who care not for creativity or the source material of what you're consuming. They couldn't give a shit if you're gay or black or whatever. You are another statistic to them. You're a demographic who they will prod with behavioral psychologists in order to find out what is the best way for you to open up your wallet and spend all your hard-earned cash. It's become very cynical and it's become very corporate, and it is like an assembly line. They're not movies now and products based on franchises we love are not made out of sense of creativity, but a cash cow. And as I've said before, we are getting these sour little dregs and being told that we have to enjoy it because otherwise you're a piece of shit. Rant over.
I can't follow that up. I don't need to. I think you've just nailed it. It really feels like that's exactly the situation we find ourselves in now. And it ties in perfectly with the things I've critiqued before, where suddenly, you've got, say, Black Panther, and they're like, oh, finally, we've got a black superhero. Like, I guess Blade never existed then. Or, we get Captain Marvel, and it's marketed as, oh, finally, we've got a strong female character leading a movie, as if Ellen Ripley or Sarah Connor never existed before. Everything is like history is consistently rewritten by these people, and everything that's come before is ignored so that they can pretend that they're the first ones to solve the problems that didn't exist in the first place. And it's all just to drive anger and get attention any way possible and turn watching a movie into some kind of fucking political act. Just another act in an endless culture war that they've manufactured largely themselves.
Oh
And yeah,
God, that's
and
depressing.
but that's that's what you've got, you know. And like you pointed out there, this is a tool for getting attention for things. You could produce any bog standard comic book movie or action movie. It's like stars a black guy in the lead. So what? That's not interesting. But you can turn it into some kind of fight for racial justice or gender equality or whatever, or you know, have the first openly gay superhero or something like that. Whatever thing you can do, whatever, you know, so-called oppressed demographic that you can try to appeal to, suddenly then it becomes a talking point, it becomes a selling point, it becomes something to base your entire movie's identity around. And whatever story that you're trying to tell in that movie is irrelevant. No one cares. What matters is that you're breaking some glass ceiling, you're pushing some new boundary that, you know, we're gonna ignore has already been pushed before. And it like you say, it gets people interested, it gets people angry, it gets people you know, either watching or pushing against this movie because they either want to support it on purely political grounds or they dislike it because it's tokenism. Either way, people are talking about it and it's driving interest, and maybe that's all they want, maybe that's all they care about.
Yes, but then you have the problem is, if you look at these franchises that we love, they have a cultural impact. The stuff that is coming out, these reboots and rehashes, they cannot capture that lightning in a bottle. They do not have that cultural impact. It does not have any staying power. It doesn't help that we live in an age of mass media consumption. Every week, there is a new video game or film or TV series that comes out. There is so much culture and products being produced. It's hard to keep track of it all. And nothing has any real lasting staying power. It's hard to stay in that cultural zeitgeist. Even Squid Game, as much as, you know, it was popular for about maybe 3 weeks, but then something else came out. It's so hard to get something to be a classic and stand out. And so people don't bother taking risks. They just piggyback off the success of already pre-bought franchises like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. So we've covered one of the red flags being Amazon with money, and Amazon's angle with diversity and the fact that artistic integrity is being thrown out the way for just corporate tokenism. I sent you that document straight from Amazon Studios. But then you also have the other problem, and this is the other red flag, which you've picked up on before, is writing. Who is writing this? What is the caliber of the writing? We do not know. Given that Amazon has a terrible track record for adapting books. I mean, you've got The Wheel of Time. I haven't touched it. Everyone's saying it's shit. They've adapted other books as well. American Gods. That was a very tiny book that they tried to stretch out into multi-seasons. And there were production problems with season 1, and season 2 came out and I never bothered with it. They're not very good at adapting other people's works. So are they going to be able to adapt the source material into something good? They're making their own thing. It's set in Lord of the Rings. They don't even necessarily have a book to base it on. It's not like Game of Thrones where you got a few books and then you wing it. This is pure winging it with a veneer of Lord of the Rings. It'll have your Galadriel and things like that, but will it have the core values of Lord of the Rings? And where are they going to have their core foundation based on? Are they going to base it on the books or their own current contemporary ideology? What do you think, Mr. Drinker?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll take a wild guess on that one. The big problem is that the Silmarillion doesn't really offer you a narrative that you can draw from. It's basically just a collection of notes and his like historical records for Tolkien's made up world. Like there's no real structure to it. There's no real central narrative to it. So it's not going to be like anything that they worked from before. Even The Hobbit had a story. I mean, okay, they padded it out, but like it was still the same basic story. They don't even have that now, and so it's going to rely entirely on the skill and the creativity and the storytelling ability of the writing team. And hey, maybe they're absolute geniuses that are just undiscovered at the moment. But when you've got a bunch of people who have only got like a couple of credits to their name, it worries me because they don't have the depth of experience that I guess I would look for in a writer that's being trusted with $1 billion show. And so, yeah, it makes me wonder where the hell they can possibly take this. But yeah, it's never going to adhere to the values of Tolkien. This is a man who was born in the 19th century.
Yes, yes, and that you raise a good point, because you need to think of who Tolkien was as a writer and what contemporary writers, modern day writers are like. Now, if you look at Tolkien, he was a Christian, he was a God-fearing man, he was a conservative, and he was in World War One. He was a hard bastard. He'd seen some awful things, and faced some real hardship. That is the exact opposite of what these Hollywood writers are like. They've never experienced that level of hardship. For them, hardship was when daddy wouldn't let them have access to their trust fund early. For them, a bad day is when Starbucks is out of fucking pumpkin spice lattes. For them, they don't have much experience to draw from. Tolkien had this realistic hardship to draw from. You know what they say, write what you know. And in Lord of the Rings, there is strife, there is war, and things like that. And again, his values were vastly different to the values of today. I doubt a room full of modern writers can truly adapt Tolkien's work for the modern age and keep his core values.
Absolutely. I mean, and this is the thing, like, I wouldn't presume to second guess a guy who fought at the Battle of the fucking Somme. Like, this is a guy who understands human suffering and war and sacrifice and death. And he's perfectly placed to write about stuff like this. You're going to get some fucking gender studies graduate who's like 25 years old, like you say, who's never encountered anything even remotely resembling hardship or suffering in their life, trying to second guess him and say that, oh, he didn't quite get it right in terms of his balance of characters and his representation. It's like, oh, get fucked. You're not in a position to comment on this, you child. Sit down. This is where I fall on this kind of thing. I would give a million times more respect to a guy like Tolkien, who's actually lived through those experiences.
Oh, yeah.
Those are character building experiences that you can't replicate in today's world. And I just have no confidence in the writers of today. I can't remember who said it, right? But they raised this perfectly when they said, we are now living in a generation where like the writers of today have never even been in a fist fight, or gotten into a real confrontation physically with another person. Like, most writers of today haven't, and so they don't even understand how to write that kind of thing. They don't understand characters that get into those kind of situations, because they've never had to deal with it.
Yeah. It creates a limited worldview, doesn't it? You don't have as much life experience. You don't have a much a well to draw upon. So what you get is their worldview. What they know of the world is based on Twitter. If you want to know how bad the writing of a show is going to be, look at their writers that they've got and look up what the fuck they say on Twitter. And when you start seeing them posturing and saying they know about the world from the comfort of their home, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a shit show. You can guess that quite easily. And this, again, you raise the point. It's they haven't been in fist fights. They haven't had that hardship. It builds character and it gives you inspiration. But a lot of these modern writers, for them, they only get hardship secondhand, vicariously. They'll see an article on Vice and they go, oh dear, you know what? Maybe there's a story there. They haven't experienced it or interacted with people that wasn't, on a screen. It limits your worldview.
Yeah, very much. And I was thinking there about Oliver Stone, who directed Platoon and like all these kinds of movies. A guy who actually fought in Vietnam, and so he was able to bring his experiences of that to the screen. And what you see then feels real because this is a guy who actually saw it and experienced it. And I guess it makes you just an absolute hard bastard having lived through something like that. But that's what you need if you're going to be making films like that. And yeah, okay, nobody today has fought in a medieval battle, clearly, but like if you had a guy like Tolkien, he understood the mass kind of human wave attack strategy of World War One. He understood the horrible effects afterwards, and he was able to bring some of those experiences into his writing, I'm sure. And yeah, like the people that we have nowadays, I'll tell you, man, like so many characters now that I see, they feel like children. And I've said this in a video that I made about modern movies, like having so many flaws and being a bit shit generally. Um, they don't act and they don't talk like adults anymore. And I just can't buy into it. You know, when people come into conflict with each other, it's feels like a couple of young teenagers getting into a hissy fit with each other, and you know they talk about their feelings afterwards. They have a good cry, they hug, and then it's all done. And it's not how the real world works, and it's not how real people get into conflict with each other. And it just feels so fake now and so contrived.
Yeah, yeah. If it was up to me, let's say, for argument's sake, I get elected to be supreme ruler of the world. Woe betide anyone who gets in my way. I would decree that before you step foot in a writer's room, you have to do, I'd say, at least 1 or 2 tours in Afghanistan. Then after that, you have to spend 2 weeks on a cancer ward. You have to take up heroin, then give it up within the span of a week, so you get that horrible withdrawal. Get a puppy, have to shoot that puppy, and then, maybe then, you get to walk into a writer's room and write a paragraph. But I would entrust good writing to someone who's had some experience. Again, you write what you know, you draw upon, hardship. Hardship makes things interesting. If everything's happy and everything go by perfectly fine, that's boring. Humanity is filled with conflict and hardship. It sucks. That is the state of reality. I'm sorry to get existential, but hardship is how we form a lot of our experiences and learn from them. And hardship is obviously drama, and drama is interesting, and that helps tell good stories that we can learn from and have a bit of good escapism. And you're just not going to get that with how a lot of modern writers think. And I think it's not going to be representative of Tolkien's work. I have no faith in these writers. Quite frankly, I think Tolkien is going to be spinning fast and hard in his grave. And honestly, you could hook up a fucking generator to his coffin and solve the world's energy crisis that way, because he's going to be spinning that fast and hard.
I would be genuinely interested to know what the average age of a writer for a major movie is now versus 30, 40 years ago. Because I'd be willing to bet that it's decreased by at least 10 years. At least. I just get the feeling that like they hire younger writers now, whether they think it's going to bring a fresh perspective onto things or whatever. And I feel like that feeds into that mentality of people that haven't really lived a life and don't have the experience of dealing with other people and dealing with conflict and dealing with hardship. Even if you haven't fought in a war, I think at least if you've progressed through life to a certain point, you've had a bit more experience and a bit more maturity. You've dealt with a lot more people, and you've got that breadth of, I guess, just experience to draw upon.
Exactly. And a lot of these, they are quite young. I see a lot of young writers in their 20s. It's more to do with how Hollywood runs, especially with nepotism. For some of these writers, you can, if you follow the right sort of breadcrumbs, as it were, there's some sort of nepotism hire there. They know one of the producers and directors. That's Hollywood for you. But obviously, with nepotism hires, that doesn't necessarily mean they're talented. And for some people in production studios and whatnot, they're of an older generation. They think, I've got one of these film graduates, some young blood, and they'll be able to appeal to the young audiences because I'm old and I don't understand social media. It's very confusing for me. How do we appeal to this young demographic who have money? And so they obviously hire the young writers. But some of these young writers have arrested development. Like you said, they don't have much life experience to draw upon. What they do have, though, is the film studies degree. But then that goes to a deeper problem, which is how these subjects, especially the humanities, are taught in academia. as someone who has worked in academia, let me tell you something. Postmodernism takes center stage. There is no counter to it, whether you're studying English literature or film. The hard line a lot of these professors follow is postmodernism. And the worst part of postmodernism, in my opinion, death of the author. And authorial intent does not matter anymore. And so that is why you have these cretins coming out of the woodwork saying, I know what Tolkien meant. I understand the source material. And he wanted all the elves to be gay and black and all these things. I understand his work better than everyone else. And it doesn't matter if you say he wrote it, because actually it doesn't matter what the author wrote. It's out there now. I have my interpretation, and my interpretation is gold. It is the law of this product. So yeah, that's the problem. A lot of postmodernist thinking has infected these creative spaces, and it's quite destructive. And obviously, as Tolkien said himself, evil cannot create anything new. They can only corrupt and ruin what good forces have invented or made.
I genuinely think postmodernism is like the gateway drug to the death of culture. That's honestly what it feels like, because it's this mentality of, well, everything can be deconstructed and everything can be separated down to its base elements and reconstituted into whatever we want it to be. And nothing has any inherent value to it. Nothing has any inherent truth. It's just all basic storytelling elements. And that is just such a horrifying way to look at art. It's the exact opposite of what I would want it to be. The piece of art that a person creates is theirs, and what they intended it to be, what they wanted to get across. You can try and get as much of that information from them as you can, and you really should while they're still around. But yeah, this idea that once it's out there, you can just reinterpret it into being whatever you want it to be, and no one can criticize you for it because it's your opinion, and your opinion just is just as valid as the author's opinion or anyone else's. It's ludicrous, it's narcissistic, and it's pointless. I hate it. I hate what postmodernism is doing to things that already exist, that were basically created by people way more intelligent and way more creative than most of the people who analyze them today.
Yeah.
And I include my fucking self in that. Like, Christ,
Ryan
I'm nowhere
Drake
near.
is bisexual, don't you know? I say so it's true. There's nothing you can say about that critical drinker. He's bisexual. He loves a bit of butt banditry. I don't care if he scores with women. That's just for show. And you know what? I think he's polyqueer, actually, and possibly schizophrenic. And that's my worldview. And anyone who says otherwise, you're a fucking bigot.
Aragorn kisses Boromir when Boromir has died. That means he is mad gay for him. Always has been throughout the whole story. In my interpretation, and no one can argue with that because that's what I've said. That's the mentality these people have. And I just hate it. I would be all right if they confined themselves to producing shit on their own time. Just produce your own shitty stories. Good luck to you. And if somehow they're good, then yeah, people will enjoy them. What happens though is that they take over like fucking parasites. They take over good things that were made by previous generations and co-opt them for their own purposes. And I'm sure you're the same way. That is when I have my real fucking issue with it, because you don't have the right to take these things and fuck them up, because someone who is better than you made it and it belongs to them. Doesn't belong to you.
Preach on. But yeah, you're a writer. Of course you're going to feel strongly about this stuff. And I've worked in academia and I've seen these black little tendrils of postmodern infect everything. I remember being in a classroom with one film professor, and we were talking about how to set up a shot, and just randomly he asked everyone, put your hands up if you're a feminist. What? It's got nothing to do with filmmaking. That's something separate. Why are you shoehorning that in? This is about just creating stuff, your own vision. Why are you interjecting your own politics into things? And again, these are very fleeting ideas, especially when it comes to identity politics. Identity politics now is used for marketing. There was a time when a new film would come out and it'd be marketed on the strengths of the filmmaking, like who's directing it, what new special effects are being done. Now, without fail, every time a new film comes out, there is some hack journalist who wants to get attention by putting out an article saying, this may be the first asexual Batman we've seen. Is it what? Where's it? And these companies don't suddenly speak out and go, actually, yeah, don't run with that line of thinking. Can we talk about the movie? No, they just sit back and go, yeah, go ahead. Get people fighting in the mud over this. You don't. This is how things are marketed now. Identity politics is the new marketing for films. And none of it holds water. Like I said, it's forgotten about. It's not really that big a deal. But for some reason, marketing people know that that's the best way to get engagement. But will this be the standard 10 years from now? Are these topics going to be that prevalent? I don't know. I don't think they're going to have as much integrity. Yes, the rings of power may be diverse, but will it have the core values of friendship? Will it stand the test of time 20 years later, just like Lord of the Rings with its grander themes? You know, if Sauron is gay, he's gay. Does that change things? Just because that morning he got something up his arse, does that really change his character in a really fundamental way? Will the war still happen or not? But then, is that bad representation? He's evil. Can evil people be gay? Oh, it just gets mired in this stupid quandary. There are bigger problems in the world. It's going to end. Why are you worried about the pronouns? Are you worried about pronouns when an orc is biting on your leg?
I think, and it's funny as well, because they would level the same argument at yourself, where they would say, well, if it doesn't matter, then why do you have a problem with it? Like, okay, we've suddenly decided that Sauron is gay, and he's a black transgender woman as well. You know, if it doesn't affect his conquest of Middle Earth, then why do you care? And it's like, well, because you're just using that as an opportunity to shoehorn in anything that you can get in there. Like that doesn't hold water as an argument. Like, well, there's no reason why you shouldn't do it, so you just go ahead and do it. Like that gives you permission to change anything as long as it doesn't impact the overall story. It's like you don't have the right to just come in and arbitrarily like alter fundamental parts of a character like that. You don't get to do that on the flimsy excuse of like, well, there's no reason we can't do it. Like that doesn't work for me, and it shouldn't work for anyone really. It's like logical storytelling, common sense.
Yeah. So just to recap, we've gone over these red flags, and so people are saying, "Oh, you're just hating it because it's new." No, these we have shown everyone. For anyone who's going to go on Twitter and go, "Oh, these people are out of touch," look. We have shown our reasons why we don't think this new addition to the franchise is going to be any good. And there are some serious red flags here. First one, you've spent a shitload of money and you're being very cagey about what you're showing us. Two, the people making this either have very little experience or none at all. And that's the big one. From the actors to the directors and writers, you haven't necessarily got an all-star cast. I mean, look at the Fellowship of the Ring. I know movie is different from film, but the principle is there. You had Sir Ian McKellen, Sir Christopher Lee, and a lot of other big names. There aren't really any massive names that stand out, but some of the names that I am seeing, I don't think they fit or don't really have that much experience. The only person I can see is a big name that I recognize is Lenny Henry, and he's going to play a Black Hobbit. I mean, Lenny Henry, is he even relevant anymore? He hosts Comic Relief charity events.
he's not really a thespian on the level of Ian McKellen, you know.
Exactly. So it's that writing on the wall. You have Amazon, who have a terrible track record, not just treating their staff like shit, but they have a terrible track record of poorly adapting stuff. Then you have the other issue of the people they've handed this most expensive TV series of all time have very little experience. And yes, you can argue, well, sometimes you have to have greatness thrust upon you. I'm not getting that. This is too risky. And at the end of the day, Amazon makes a shitload of money. I mean, yes, £1 billion has just gone down the drain, but they'll recoup that with people using Amazon Prime. You know, all it takes is a couple of people buying, you know, crap on Amazon during Black Friday, and they've got that money back. So this isn't a case where if there's one bad season, a company like Netflix or HBO goes, right, this is draining our funds, let's cut it dead. No. Amazon, their ratings might be low, but they can, if they wanted to, they could drag it out for those full 5 seasons. 5 years of bad writing, bad acting, and a horrible, horrible addition to the Lord of the Rings franchise. It's a nightmare world we live in.
I mean,
that's a bit dramatic, but
I mean, shit, man. Like, well, look at Paramount with Star Trek Discovery.
Please.
When I'm on my deathbed, I'll still be convinced that's some kind of weird money laundering scheme, because that show must be losing the millions, tens of millions. Nobody fucking watches it. It costs a shit ton to make. And yet there it is. It's like season after season, they just keep churning that shit out. But with something like this, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like over here in the UK, I don't know what it's like in America, but like everyone's got Amazon Prime already. You know, like everyone uses it to get their fucking next day deliveries. It's like costs nothing practically. And everyone who's got it or who's going to get it has already purchased it. So I don't see how this is going to attract a huge number of new subscribers for that. So I don't know. I don't know where they expect to make their revenue from. There's no direct revenue from this show because nobody pays to get it.
I think in the Amazon case, it's more viewership. They would rather, Amazon doesn't want you watching Disney Plus or Netflix. They only want Amazon. We are seeing the case of what I can only describe as the streaming wars. We have so many of these conflicting services, and one has to always come out on top. Netflix has done very well from the pandemic, but Amazon, like many big company, they want your full attention. They want all your money. They don't want you going off and watching Netflix for hours on end. They would rather have you watch Amazon Prime, and they're next. They'll cram in their adverts for things. And while you're on Amazon as well, because it's multifaceted, Netflix doesn't sell extra stuff. It's just Netflix shows. Amazon gets extra money because, I just watched Lord of the Rings. You know what? Amazon sells the merchandise for Lord of the Rings. I'll buy that. So it's more like it's a distraction to get you into the shop. You see what I mean? It's very cynical. It's very cynical.
I kid you not, man. It won't be long before adverts start popping up mid-show. You know, it's like, like say it's just like some modern drama. It's like, like the coffee machine, like that's being shown in this kitchen scene. Well, you can order it off Amazon right now. Just click that one-click order, and there it is. That's probably where we're going to head.
We already have that. We already have that. There have been Amazon shows where they have Alexas and people saying, Alexa, can you do this? Mr. Robot, I saw Alexas in, and one of the characters was interacting with an Alexa and using it as an AI friend surrogate. I've seen it in that short-lived Jean-Claude Van Damme series. We're already there, Critical. We're past that point.
I hate the world.
How empty is that bottle right now?
It's like, I'm getting there, man. There's a good one here, actually. Fans, cast it into the fire, Bezos. No. It's like, this is too good. I'm never giving it up. But yeah, like as people have pointed out, they don't have the rights to Lord of the Rings. They don't have the rights to the Silmarillion even. They've got the rights to the appendices. And so that's why, well, what you end up with could be a fragmented mess anyway. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, it's speculation at this point because the teaser doesn't give us a huge amount, but what I've seen doesn't look good. Put it that way.
Yes. We could it could be great, and you go, you know what, this is good. But again, it is one of those things where you are noticing patterns, and there are clear patterns that you've seen in previous attempts like this. Maybe not with Lord of the Rings, but with other franchises. And there's just that part of your brain that's going, hang on, I've walked down this path before. This looks familiar. Oh, bugger, this is Rape Alley. I need to turn back.
Or do I? But no, I get what you mean exactly. We have seen too many franchises get bent over a barrel, butt fucked, and then thrown into a ditch. And this just feels like we're going down the same road with it. And yeah, the moment anyone tells me that there's going to be a modern remake or a reimagining of something, yeah, my first instinct is, yeah, it's going to be garbage, clearly. You know, and if it's anything beyond that, I'm shocked to my core.
But the sad thing is there is still room for an original idea. I mean, everyone can argue every story's already been told, but it's the way you tell it. And I have no problem with just people attempting and failing. I would rather someone attempt an idea of their own, maybe get one series out and it gets cancelled, than just have to ride off someone else's success, have to use that name. It shows a lack of ingenuity. You need to be able to create your own world, to create your own characters. Or else, from a creative perspective, if I was a writer for those shows, how can I develop personally? You know, if all I'm doing is reboots and covering my betters, why can't I be that standard?
Yeah, I mean,
that's what it gets back to, really.
It speaks to a wider kind of stagnation, I guess, of our culture and our creativity when we're not making new things anymore. We're just repurposing old stuff and I guess, just aping what previous generations have come up with. And you know, what are they going to say when they look back on this time? Like, our generation is just the one that was the copycat generation. All we could do was just remake things and reboot things. Like that's not a great moniker to have on us. Like Sargon here is saying, they're looking for your validation of their ideology wearing the Tolkien skin suit. They're wearing the thing that you love as a mask and asking you to love them. And he's exactly right.
They're wearing the skin of your grandmother and saying, "Come in for a kiss." That's what it is. But you see something behind the eye sockets, and that makes you go, "Hang on, this." I mean, you're wearing the skin. There's something familiar there, but I don't know. There's something iffy.
I was going to suggest, because there's a few more super chats here. If you've got time, we can maybe do a few more and see how we get on.
Yeah, go. Yeah, my little old man bladder needs emptying. So
all right.
This is what I get for drinking all this booze. I tell you, this Jack Daniels goes right through me. I don't know how you can stomach it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to tell me twice. Yeah, if you need to pop off or anything, just go for it, man. I'll do some super chats here. And if you want to chime in with answers or whatever, then you just go for it. Yeah, Unhinged says, I'll be in the Drinkers Fellowship, only this ring doesn't go on his finger. I have no idea what you're asking about there, sir. No, doesn't ring a bell. No, thanks, man. Desahiso says, Drinker, you procurer of perpetual positivity. I hope you're keeping well and hope you... Oh, then it stopped and says, a thought occurred with so much diversity and inclusion. I hear there will be 2 white straight men in the Rings of Power. I hear they will be the talking characters of the show. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, man. It's yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. The teasers don't tell us a huge amount at this stage about who the focus is going to be on. I've got a feeling it's going to be Galadriel because she's your strong female character, of course. Yeah, they've got this sort of balance of diversity in their favor, as they always do. And yeah, it doesn't look great. It feels like it's very contrived and very tokenized. But yeah, thank you to you, man. Like, you donated €100 there, so very much appreciated, mate. Cannon Folderall gave me $2 for a thumbs up sticker, super sticker. Thanks, mate. Michael Hing says, Drinker recommends Point Break sometime. I could well indeed do that. Yeah, Point Break, man. I haven't seen that in about 10 years at least. That was old Keanu and Swayze, as I recall. Yeah, good action, just great storyline, and yeah, I just remember it being one of those great movies of the 90s. Michael Kaplinger said, Drinker, you magnificent man. Listening to you while I work on my own screenplay. Love your work. Respect to you, man. I mean, I cannot listen to other people while I'm trying to write. Like, I need silence. I can't even do it with music. Like, I need just silence to focus on what I'm doing. If I hear other people talking, that's it. I'm just checked out. Voxis, I don't know if you have experienced that yourself. Like, if you're writing, doing creative stuff, can you listen to other people, or do you need like distraction free?
I tend to have a very strange process. It's very fragmented, but I just get random sentences in my head, like, oh, that's a good point, I should write that down. My creative process, I find showers are really good for the creative process. I have a very high water bill, but I find just standing in the shower and I kind of zone out and daydream in the shower. I don't know why. And I waste a lot of water that way. And then I come out the shower going, oh, got all these ideas, and I start dripping on my keyboard and things like that. And I tend to have a rather quite vomitous way of writing. I just everything in my mind, I just splurge out onto a paper. And it's like just having a big cathartic vomit. And then afterwards, I have to go through the vomit, rearrange it, go through the carrots and peas, and try and make sense of it all. And then by the end of it, I've got a script. I also talk to myself as well. That's not strange. It's only strange if you respond. So yeah, that's been my process. A bit haphazard, but it's worked for me so far. Everyone has their own way of doing things. So there's no right or wrong way. You've got to find the right way to write and find your voice as well. That's more important. Finding your own distinct voice. But yeah.
What was this one? There's a good one here from Bilbo. He says, writing in the shower is better than pissing in the shower. I mean, why not do both at the same time? That's the question I want to know.
Shitting in the shower is harder. You have to stamp it down with your foot.
That requires a man of excellence and focus and sheer fucking will to do that.
It depends how much Guinness you've had. Otherwise, then it's just simple, yeah. Just black tar.
Yeah.
We do literally talk shit.
Yeah. Tim France, he said, two of the best together at last. Hail Drunkler and Hail Blessed Pipe Man.
That fucking name, I'll never lose it. Oh, it's the Blessed Pipeman. Thanks, EFAP. Thanks for giving me that title. I am called Professor Tosspot, you know.
That's it. He didn't spend 5 years at Tosspot University to just be called Mr.
Yes,
he's a professor
where I got
now.
my title from.
James Kelly said the scowl from that old Hobbit after Gandalf's fireworks has got to be the best scowl in movie history. This stream is going to be epic. Yeah, that dude really swung for the fences there with that one. I love when his wife looks at him and then he just kind of smiles a little bit, like, I fucking like those fireworks after all. Crimson Mist said, Drinker and Professor Tosspot on the same stream. Rejoice! Excellent. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been
Two
great to have you
grating
on.
voices in your ear holes. I hope you haven't perforated any eardrums tonight.
I just feel terribly working class now when I'm talking to you, like terribly posh crap.
Well, no, it's fine. All you got to do is smoke 80 a day and you'll be on my level. Just get a bit of the old throat cancer.
Yeah, have a few brandies and I'm good to go. Next one said, Maverick Christian, do you folks feel old like me knowing the film came out 20 years ago? Yes.
21 if we're going to twist the knife, but yeah.
Man, that feels like a long time now. Jamie Boyer said, the Professor and the Drinker together at last. This will make my night shift a lot better. Thank you both for your amazing content. Thank you very much, man, and I hope your night shift goes in quickly.
And I hope your boss isn't around, because your boss is a cunt! Fire this man, he's slacking on the job!
Robert Lewis said, hey Drinker, thanks for checking out my short story. Hope you like it. Yeah, I'm working my way through it. You sent me the audiobook version of it. I think it was like digitized or something. But yeah, I quite enjoyed it so far. Cheers, mate. Anthony Foster says, Ellie's gay, by the way. Yeah, that's a little reference there to the Last of Us 2 with their really subtle gay relationship with the main character. Yeah, within the first 30 seconds of the game, she's full on snogging her best friend. So, yeah, not the most subtle. Stephen Bobo says, hey, Critical Drinker and Voxis. It's great to see my favorite YouTube creators on the same stream. So you guys see the video with Robert Patterson's nerdgasm over Tifa and Aerith and Zoe Kravitz's disdain look at Robert. I've heard about this. And Zoe better shut the fuck up because Tifa and Aerith are absolute perfection. and I'll not hear a bad word said about either of them. Although personally, I'm more of an Aerith guy than a Tifa, but that's just me. I'll fight as to the death over that, honestly. Daisho says, Drinker just looked it up, and the tattoo that each of them got is 9 in Elvish. Ironic since 8 of them got it. Yeah, that is ironic, actually. So, yeah, Jonathan Rhys-Davies, he didn't get it, but apparently his stunt double got it in his place. So, isn't that nice? Von Max said, the Drinker, the Professor, and Lord of the Rings, the 2 most talented guys on the internet. Hey, well, at least Voxis is.
Oh, pshaw. No, excuse me, how many subscribers do you have? 1 million? I still haven't got my silver plaque to hang over my toilet.
You're close, aren't you? You're well into the 90s. So
I've had a lot of production problems, but no. Well, thank you very much for those kind words. Thank you.
For all the people watching this, right? If you haven't subscribed to Voxis already, the link is in the description for this. Give him a follow. This guy's awesome. Like his reviews are just so funny and just entertaining, but really insightful in the writing process. Genuinely really enjoy them. So 2 of you discussing the best series of all time. Am I dreaming? You might well be, sir. Who knows? But I can assure you that I'm real, and so is Voxis.
To some extent.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Not trying to break the fourth wall.
Yeah. You're messing with their heads. Angus McKnight says, hello, Drinker. Question for you. Since both films came out around the same time, do you prefer Ian McKellen as Gandalf or Magneto? He does. I mean, he absolutely nails it with both, but I prefer him as Gandalf because he just, I don't know, man, just seems born to play that role.
Yeah, much warmer character. I used to have a party trick where I'd get drunk. I'd do a fairly good Ian McKellen, I think, but my party trick was to recite The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as Ian McKellen. Very bizarre.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. We couldn't possibly ask you to do it now unless you really felt compelled to.
It's too much pressure. I need to be
okay, no, that's fine. I understand. That would be awesome to hear, though.
Oh, hang on. It's fresh. I need to get the lyrics. It's been a while. Fresh. Fuck my fingers.
I'm going to sit back and let this awesomeness happen.
Hang on. It's been a while. Maybe I must do. In West Philadelphia, born and raised, on the playground where I spent most of my days, chilling out, maxing, relaxing all cool, and all shooting some people outside of the school, when a couple of guys were up to no good, started making trouble in my neighborhood. I got in one little fight and my mom got scared. She said, you're moving with your auntie and uncle in Bel-Air. I begged and pleaded with her day after day, but she packed my suitcase and sent me on my way. She gave me a kiss, and then she gave me my ticket. I put my Walkman on and said, I might as well kick it. First class, yo, this is bad, drinking orange juice out of a champagne glass. Is this what the people of Bel-Air are living like? This might be all right. I'll skip the other bits, because this is the extended stuff.
You brought so much gravitas to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's fucking awesome. Oh, that's brilliant, man. Well done. That's awesome.
I can do the rest of it, but yeah. That was my party trick. It's been a while since I did that.
I love it. Honestly, see if we could have got the backing music for that at the same time.
Yeah, but then you get fucking Susan giving you DMCA bollocks.
I know. It would have been almost worth getting the stream demonetized just for that. William TM, he says, your content's great. My fiance and I watch, and she finds it hilarious and insightful. It's just such great fun. Thank you. Thanks very much, man. Now, on Lord of the Rings, what of Aragorn? Self-doubt, dismissing the story about seeking the throne to win Arwen. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the crux of his character, really. He's turned away from the path of being the king of Gondor because he doesn't consider himself worthy of it, and he doesn't think he can pass that test because he's Isildur's heir. The same guy who fell into the temptation of the ring, he's been haunted by that, and he thinks he's going to have the same thing happen to him. So a good character arc for him. Eventually, he puts that weakness aside and he overcomes it, and he resists the temptation of the ring. I think it's a pretty good storyline for Aragorn. Xenix says, "Bugger me, the drinker and Voxis. I didn't know I needed this, but something is off. That's it. Voxis is not reading Chuck Tingle. Heresy."
Oh, really? I sabotage enough podcasts by reading gay, strange erotica. At my own podcast, Andy Fap. I'm not going to sully this already sullied stream. But yes, I do occasionally read the fucking. I read your novel one time.
Oh, really?
Podcast. Yes. I am. Yeah.
Did you put a gay erotic edge to it as well? Like, there's plenty of opportunities.
Your writing's gay enough.
Yeah, there we go.
No. Everyone, because at the time everyone was complaining, it's like, we need to get you on Critical Drinkers show, and I've said, well, I can't just invite myself. I can't just barge in on someone's podcast. So I said, all right, as a compromise, I'll go on Amazon, and you can obviously get the first chapters. And I said, as a compromise, if you can't bring Muhammad to the mountain, bring the mountain to Muhammad. So I I did a dramatic reading of your spy thriller, and then I read some gay porn. So yeah, that was. That was quite an evening.
I honestly, if you were reading my books, like especially with the gravitas of like Ian McKellen, man, that's like my dream come true.
I wonder if you could save money. If it's like I can't afford Ian McKellen, but can I afford his non-unionized Mexican equivalent?
Yeah, we got Voxis here.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I shudder to think what happens when you get to the sex scenes, honestly.
The sex scene. Which chapter was that? I only got to the car bomb explosion on I think the streets of Kabul. Was it Kabul? It was the first book.
Yeah. So there's a few different sex scenes throughout the series, but yeah, I think you probably have to skip to like 2/3 of the way through it till you get to that.
Okay, and are they good purple prose? Are you quite a critic saying, yeah, that's a good sex scene. It's nothing too. Does it hit the right mark? Not too vulgar, but not too soft.
It's tricky because like my editor usually said to me, like, I'm not going to go near those sex scenes. You just write them how you want to do them. I've not got any feedback on those bits. So yeah, like I to be fair, they're usually fairly restrained because I was like, I'm not going to turn this into a Mills and Boon novel or something like. But
Ryan's gristling, throbbing manhood.
Yeah, it's throbbing member.
Purple-headed warrior, her quivering love pudding.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's usually a little bit, and it's usually what's I guess important to me as the writer is like what happens that leads up to that, and then what are the results of that sex scene.
Yeah, are they quite realistic? Like he had to get the sex towel to dry himself off. He didn't want to use the curtain this time.
They had an awkward standoff over who had to sleep in the wet spot and stuff.
There was an audible queef and it got awkward. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the stuff they never put in. They never put in some of the gritty stuff like, I've got too much fanny batter on me. They never.
You had to strain hard to hold in a fart because that could if that happens at the crucial moment now, and that can blow the whole thing wide open.
He started to get a pain in his lower back. They had to change positions, but she wasn't fond of that one. Then her roommate came in and said, "Can you be a bit more quieter?"
It's always, these things, they always play out perfectly, don't they? And like everyone's always in amazing shape, even if, they've just been shot at and they've just been beat up and stuff. It's like, they're still able to do it.
I've got a sucking chest wound, but by God, I'm going to come.
Yeah, damn right, it lends an air of urgency to things, I guess. But they're in there for sure. So yeah, if you ever catch them, just think of me writing them very awkwardly. I'll do a couple more, and then I guess we should probably finish up because we're almost at 3 hours here. So we've been going for quite a while here. Hungry Ewok, he said, the thing about the Star Wars prequels and The Hobbit is they might have been bad, but they felt honest to the epic for the most part. I mean, I guess with the prequels, the intention was definitely there. It's just George Lucas kind of lacked the skill to do it properly. He really needed good writers and good directors to do that stuff for him. He should have just been, give us the high level ideas, George, and we'll get someone to do it for you. I feel like with The Hobbit, it was a bit more cynical, mostly on the part of the studio. Just trying to wring as much value as they could out of this. The next one, Commandant VHS says, Lord of the Rings is great. The Hobbit is a real slog to watch. Yep, no arguments here at all. It really was. THS 1989 says, the thing about the Lord of the Rings films, they were created by a man who passionately cared about the source material, and the awards speak volumes as to how well he succeeded. I don't think either of us would argue with that, really, would we?
No, it's all true. It's all true. Tolkien's good, and Peter Jackson as well. He, like I said, when I used to teach film students, I'd say, look, you may be making B movies at the moment, but if you're passionate about something, you can get better with each movie. And you can see that with Peter Jackson. Yeah, he did those splatter films, Bad Taste and the zombie one. But then he started to get a little bit more serious. I loved The Frighteners. That was the previous movie he did to Lord of the Rings. I think it's a very underrated film, The Frighteners. Really good, about a ghost. He's a ghost hunter, but he's a con man, but he can actually see ghosts, and he's got like a grift with his ghost buddies that gets him work. But then there's this grander, darker story, and that was good. But then he does Lord of the Rings, and then he starts to do a lot more serious and much more professional looking things. And of course, They Will Not Grow Old, which showed off his editing talents. He was given a load of raw footage that was all over the place and old testimonies from World War I veterans, and he edited that into a coherent documentary. So yeah, he's one of those directors who you can actually see them get better over time and learn from their experiences. And you don't see that with some directors.
If anything, you see them get worse, I guess, over time. J.J. Abrams is probably a good example of that. Yeah, the Frozen in the 80s, he said, if Sam Raimi would have directed The Hobbit, we could have got Ash blasting Smaug with his boomstick. That I would pay to see. That would be fucking awesome. Transylvanian 90 says, awesome stream. I'd point out to Blade Runner and Dune as franchises that haven't yet been destroyed, both courtesy of Denis Villeneuve's talents as a director for their sequels or reboots. Yeah, I don't know if you've had much experience with, say, Dune or Blade Runner 2049. Did you watch them? Did you have any thoughts on them at all?
Yes, and that's my next video.
There we go. There we go. Perfect.
I've had some production problems because I was trying to get a pain box, an actual film replica pain box, but I got stilted by the prop maker. So that set me back a bit. But yes, that's been in development for a few months now. And I'm looking at the Dune movie and the Dune franchise as well, because, yeah, it's an interesting one. But that's coming out this month. Fingers crossed. I have a terrible production schedule, but yeah.
Andrew Carroll says Jackson copied Ralph Bakshi's intro. It's almost even the same script, just better animation. Okay. I don't know enough about that to comment on it, if I'm honest. Retro Reister Gaming says, I think Gandalf would have been much better as a trans midget of color. Well, obviously he would have, because Gandalf has to represent the world that we live in today. So yeah, naturally. John said, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit are both single continuous stories in the hands of competent movie makers. The Silmarillion, a group of loosely connected stories being made by dunderheaded idiots. What's the likely outcome? I think we all know. But yeah, that sums the situation up pretty much perfectly. Brenton Palmer asks, when are Drinker and Az going to do Hot Shots 1 and 2? Yeah, it'll happen. Because yeah, we both love those movies, so yeah, I'd love to get Az back on soon and do them. And PLN 2002 says, with everything you described from the movie, my mind just brings up the accompanying music and I just start to whistle or sing along. The score and sound design of these movies are so magnificent. I pretty much agree. I can't fault the soundtrack for any of these three movies. I think whatever's going on, I think the soundtrack just captures it perfectly, captures the mood, captures the tone. Just, they did a great job. But yeah, I think because we've been going about 3 hours now, probably not going to get through all the super chats tonight. So I will do a catch-up stream in a couple of days just to finish them up. But yeah, Voxis, Professor Tosspot, I want to thank you, sir, for coming on tonight. Like,
Well,
you've been a great guest.
really, I'm very grateful that you had me on your stream. I know this has been a long time coming, but I should be thanking you for getting me on your stream, getting me some exposure, but also just good banter. Good banter. It's top banter. It's a fun chat. Don't take this shit too seriously. And I think that's the point, really, isn't it? Yeah. And I believe it was George, not George, J.R. Tolkien who said it best. If more of us valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world. And I must thank you, Critical Jinker, for making things a merrier world. Things are very chaotic at the moment, and sometimes we do need a little escape and distraction from it all. So thank you for having me on, and thank you for giving a distraction for all your viewers and having a fun night.
Absolutely. No, I wholeheartedly agree with that. You know, if we can't have a laugh doing stuff like this, what the hell's the point, man? Honestly, we should be able to have fun with this. And I hope for all you guys that have been watching this, like, you've been able to have a bit of fun with us as well. It's been a real pleasure to talk about this movie. It's fantastic. You know, I love with these happy hours the chance to like really talk about great movies that we've enjoyed, and this is one of the best for sure. Yeah, thank you to all you guys that have super chatted me, that have been in chat, that have been so active tonight. You know, your generosity is always appreciated. It's always good. And it just makes these streams such a joy to do. And thank you as well for all my mods tonight that have, as always, they do a fantastic job. It's kind of a thankless job a lot of the time, and it means they have to really pay attention to what's going on. But man, you guys do great. So I appreciate all you guys. And yeah, I guess that's just, yeah, well done, mods. But yeah, that I guess is all we've got for tonight. So yeah,